got a starting soon overlay, which we'll just flick up as well. And so mics are hot, so don't say anything too bad about Matt Gates or who else. Who's the latest super crazy?
Oh God,
Kari Lake's pretty special. Mike Pillow.
the U.S. is full of it, so
What? So he
pick anyone.
When did the US seem to become so anti-science? It freaks me out how dumb the public discourse is. It's just absolutely mega dumb. I mean, are people actually really stupid? Like I love those YouTubes where people go out in the street and go, name a country beginning with U, and they can't think of one.
Yeah,
and you go, and then they go, what about the United States of America? And they go, oh yeah, imagine or
it's not.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, it's true. It's all true. I don't know. It's funny. I try to think about a time when science was really forward in the country, but it's never been. I don't think it's ever been genuine. I think it's always been, it's always been politically driven, or it's been like a Hollywood drive, or there's been some like social reason that anybody would ever care about like science as a real science, like the real reason things
but
are.
how do people graduate college with a genuine belief that evolution is a scam?
I think that. Oh yeah, I mean. I have so many good ones.
That's what I don't understand. How does anyone get to the stage of getting into college? And you've got a different system to us, where you get 2 years where you go to pretend college, don't you? And then you and then you go to real university as a grad student. Whereas we don't do anything like that.
Yeah, we're way behind educational. Our system is really slow comparatively. We don't. Everywhere else has major language requirements. You learn to speak other languages as a requirement, as one should, as a world citizen.
Yeah.
You learn all sorts of things. Advanced. You all get into like advanced academic work in what we call high school, because of course you do. But here they're just like, they just sort of blow a lot of smoke up, everyone's backside and tell them that they're doing really good, and they send them off to college, and then they pretend that they are adults for like 4 years, and then they graduate. And then they enter into the working class at about 21, 22. So they're super good at drinking. But that's about it. Yeah.
Well, we get good at drinking. I mean, I was good at drinking at about 14. So
that's cultural. Yeah. Australians are well known for that. Part of it's your part.
It wasn't that common that early. Generally, about 16, 17, everyone starts to get into it. But that's moving right away now. We're all getting more conservative as we get. I think our kids are more conservative, or other people's kids. I don't have any.
So too. Sobriety is a lot cooler these days.
Yeah. Well, let's say, who can we say? I've got to say hello, Facebook. So we're just waiting for the notifications for everyone to pop in.
Mm-hmm. I have an important question.
Go for it.
Do you swear, curse?
We can. I'm far less sweary than I used to be, but if I'm upset or something, I'll say it. A few people told me that when I swear so much, I lose my I lose my authority as a commentator, and then I think, well, I'm not sure that I actually have any. I'm just a bird nerd, but
they ought not listen to my still in hiatus podcast, if that's how they feel.
Well, I dropped the F-bomb and and stuff frequently over the history of my shows, and I mean I'm well past 100 or so. I think probably up to about 120 or something now, maybe more. I don't know. I do lots of live streams that haven't yet made it into the podcast feed because you can't just keep bombarding the podcast feed. It gets less effective. Plus, I do shows like this, where it's just generally riffing about bird watching and birds and whatnot. But the original idea of the show was to focus on like a species or a genus or a habitat or a locality that was under threat. So that's and we still do that. But since the pandemic is over, and Chris, if you're watching, Chris on Facebook, it's not for the want of trying. I have well over 36 invitations out to academics and researchers at the moment, but all the people who couldn't go and do field work during the pandemic are out doing field work and now have the results and are writing up their theses. So a lot of people are too busy to talk to me. So and there's a whole lot of people I'm trying to catch up with that we spoke to 2 years ago, 3 years ago, who are back out in the field. So Chris, I take your criticism on board. When are you going to do more bird stuff and stop talking about all this other stuff? When someone comes in and talks to me, Chris, that's the answer to that. I would love to be. What have I got this week? I can tell you, apart from Sean, who we'll introduce, who has a non de plume. We'll talk about that in a minute. But for anyone, Chris, if you happen to get the pre-show bit now, I'll actually address you directly in the proper show. We're talking about a big year tomorrow with Bruce Richardson, who has now done several extended trips bird watching around the place and produced books about it. Wow. Wednesday is the Dawn Chorus show. Sean, what we do on the Dawn Chorus show once a month is people record what they hear really early in the morning, and we check out the difference over the period of a year. And I don't know if you know Rebecca Heisman. She's got a book which is going to arrive on my doorstep this afternoon or tomorrow morning about bird migration and just what's happening with bird migration in North America, but the world generally. Yeah. So she's an author. That's all about birds, and I've got Millie Formby coming back talking about her microlight flight around Australia to draw attention to migratory birds, waders, shorebirds. And we've got another author, and I'm not sure which day this will be because it's not locked in yet, but from the UK talking about how common birds, really the whole premise of what my show was all about, how common birds are becoming rare. And that means rare birds are becoming really rare. So, yeah. All right, I am going to run the countdown now, Sean, and then we will kick into it with an introduction.
Sounds great.
Let's go. G'day bird nerds, it's Monday and that means it's Urban Birds. It's not Monday with Holly. Monday with Holly is back on the 27th. Today you've got me and you've got Sean, who I advertised as Wallie Hampton because that was his nom de plume, and we'll talk about how he got that nom de plume. Sean's in Pennsylvania, not far from New York City as we've been discussing. Big into birding, so much so that he used to do a podcast with with some others
Yeah.
on birds, but he's a philosopher. Oh, hang on. Let's get
Oh, yeah.
philosopher. So let's get into it. Sean, Wally, welcome to the Bird Emergency.
Hi, thanks for having me. Connecticut, though.
I beg your pardon. Beg your pardon. Connecticut. That's right.
I'm not. I'm not that kind of person. There's some folks here. You gotta watch them.
Actually, let's start on that. States in the US are. When you look at a map, they look like they're smaller than states in Australia. But of course, there's many more people in more of them. How different culturally and in terms of what people like to do for recreation would New York be from Connecticut? And since you don't want to be a Pennsylvania person, or even Massachusetts, because they're all. I think my state, which is the smallest mainland state in Australia, can probably fit all of those states we just talked about in it. I think.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are there cultural differences for that northeast part of the country?
100%. Even just in the Northeast, every state is a little bit different. New York is pretty big relative to big states, and it goes from New York City, like we all know, Manhattan and New York City is massive. It's like so many people, and all the way up to like tiny little states on the tiny little towns on the Canadian border, up by Niagara Falls and stuff like that, in those areas that are like tiny little mountain towns and things like that. So just New York alone has its own cultural distinctions, and that's pretty common even in our small states. But I mean, my dad's family is from Pennsylvania originally, and they're Pennsylvania Dutch, basically like grew up around the Amish, and that is a whole different world compared to where I am, and it's only 6 hours or so away, give or take. So it's
now. I've just pulled up my stats for the podcast, not my YouTube or Facebook or anything else stats, but for the podcast, and I can tell you that there are far more listeners to the podcast from Oregon, California. Virginia actually is the biggest. Yeah, Virginia and Oregon State are about tied, and then I get California.
Yeah,
and then we're looking at Ohio, Texas, New Jersey, New York State, and then all the others are pretty low. So, is there a difference to your mind? I mean, it's anecdotal about bird watching.
Yeah, the names Ohio, especially. Ohio is well known for its like Young Birders program through Ohio State University, one of the big colleges here. They produce a ton of new ornithologists. The Ohio birding numbers are pretty impressive. It's sort of like it seems like there's a huge concentration of birders, so there's also a huge concentration of rare species showing up and things like that. A lot of coverage for area, which is kind of huge. So, and the same goes for Oregon, and that's coastal Oregon is incredible for seabirds, as incredible as the U.S. gets for seabirds, coastal U.S. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Those are the states I would expect. Virginia would cover Washington, D.C., I would imagine. So
no, probably actually, yeah, it probably does. I'm just looking, but Washington, D.C., Hagerstown in brackets, because I can break down cities. So actually, there's only one download difference between the group of Yakima, Pasco, Richland, Kennewick. They're all grouped together, and they have one download more than DC, Hagerstown, and then we get down to Columbus, Ohio, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, then New York, then Dallas, then Detroit, then LA, then El Paso, then Boston and Manchester. That's my top 10 locations in the US.
All right. So that makes sense, especially Columbus and the Richland, Yakima. That's like inland Washington State.
Okay, that's Washington State. So that's interesting, isn't it? That in terms of locations, even though Washington State is way down on my stats, that actual concentration, that can't be right, can it?
There's universities located out there and a lot of research facilities and things. Also, it's like a sort of a cold, like a high desert kind of situation. It's desert, but and then it sort of heads right into the mountains out there. So there's a lot of research and some interesting species distribution for some of those plains birds and things like that show up. Nothing that we get out here that's any interesting. We don't see that cool stuff.
Yeah. And I actually, the more I look at those stats, I have to think that maybe they're not right, because maybe what's pinging off on the stats is where they're routed through, because it doesn't. The map doesn't make sense with the cities. So anyway, we'll just get away from that. But the point of talking about that was that there are differences in US states about what people do for leisure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So some people love to go bird watching, and you're one of those people.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's a bit incongruous, isn't it? That if you're saying your stage name, your nom de plume, which is Wallie Hampton, is like a skater name, similar to the way that people get their "what's your porn star name?"
Yeah, exactly.
Your skater name is similar to that. Is that a normal thing? Like, I mean, is Tony Hawk? Is he not Tony Hawk?
Real. Yeah, no, that's like it was one of those dumb Twitter things. I was like,
oh, okay, what?
It's funny because it came up, and then like when I actually did the generator part of it, like did it right with all the directions. When it came up, I was like, oh wow, I actually really like that name, and it's stuck. I put it up as my my name for my Substack account. I don't write very often on there, but when I do, I publish like under that instead. So I don't know why I even have decided to do that. I just latch onto these ideas.
So I think if I remember right, the porn star one had to be I think it was your first pet's name and your street name.
Yeah.
When you were growing up, or when you were at school or high school or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So was it pet? Did you have a pet called Wally?
No, it was like the last trick you learned, and the name of the street you lived on when you started skateboarding, I think.
Okay.
And so I had just learned a trick called a Wallie, which is sort of smashing into a wall and
bouncing off and coming, and then landing back on your board and keeping going. Yeah, okay.
Trying to make it look graceful, and you're really just smashing into brick walls and such. And then Hampton I grew up on Hampton Park was the name of the street. So I just like the way it sounded, Wallie Hampton, because Wally Lamb, the author. It was like a good name.
Hampton Park sounds like a drive, not a street.
It was actually like a condominium complex, so I don't even know if it's
even better.
Everything, but it's super arbitrary because there's no delineation for where things start and stop. I have no idea. Now, example of American infrastructure at its finest. So.
Now let me welcome in YouTube and Twitch. How are you? Along with the Facebookers. If you've got questions, comments, you know the drill. Put them in. If you're one of the new people who'd hit me up in the last day or two saying, "How do I find you? Where are the live links?" Well, let us know, because Sean, the chat we call the Riot Squad, and probably a very different connotation that the Riot Squad would have in metropolitan USA.
Yeah.
Let's check your birding knowledge here.
Oh,
What's a group of kookaburras known as?
A group of kookaburras. The only thing, I mean, I know what one looks like. I know they have beautiful singing voices, and there was a song that we were taught when we were young, and that's the.
And would that be Kookaburra sits in the old gum tree? Yeah, there we go.
Why American children were taught that song, I'm not quite sure, honestly.
Oh, because it's a cool rhyme.
Great song.
and of course now everyone, well, there were no connotations, and I learned that in the late. I'm just wondering if it squeezed into '69. Certainly the early '70s, and when we said "gay your life must be," nobody was giggling at that stage. But maybe when you sung those lyrics, you were all punching each other on the arm and giggling.
Young children, kids being kids, right? Yeah. But yeah. So what is a group of kookaburras called?
A riot.
Is it really? That's
so the chat group is the Riot Squad. So welcome, Riot Squad. Look forward to your input today.
Riot Squad. I'm never going to forget that fact now too. That one's going away. When I do make it to Australia finally in my life, I will remember that.
Well, we'll talk about travel in a minute, but folks, you know that this is one of my hobby horses, low carbon birding, and while I'm not a fanatic about it, I do think that you can do your hobby or your fanatical pursuit, if bird watching is fanatical for you, without having to destroy the places that you want to go bird watching in. So, Sean, tell us about bird watching on a skateboard.
So I've used it. It's the skate park where we're at. Unfortunately, we're just adding to the carbon footprint with it, just like anyone else. But we'll try. We do our best to reduce our waste and anything like that. Anyway, skate park where I'm at is in this beautiful park. It's on a river, right at the bend in the river. So everything slows down, and there's like a small beach for swimming and all of that. And the best part about it is the fact, because there's the river, there's enough forest land that's not been interrupted and stuff like that, hasn't been developed, that it's great, absolutely great for birds, especially early spring and fall. It's a migrant trap. So when I'm hurt, which is inevitable at 41 years old, limping between tricks and such, it's perfect. I don't even have to have binoculars, because I'm in there's these big tall oak trees that are just over it's an old concrete skate park. There's oak trees, and there's a river, and there's pines. There's the perfect mix to bring in warblers and every other migrant, but mostly everybody just wants to see the warblers. So it's perfect to not have to try to pick between the two things that I'm obsessed with. I can just do them actively at the same time, not paying attention to anything that anyone's doing, because I know there are pine warblers above me, and I just stop and listen to the pine warblers, and everybody's like, "What are you doing?" So,
yeah, it's like everybody has their own way that they like to do bird watching. Now, just here's an example of what we do with the Riot Squad. Hi, Kevin. Kevin messaged me early today and said, "How can I how can I find you?" You know, blah blah blah. So, Kevin, well done. You've done it. Welcome to the Right Squad. As soon as you start to comment, you're part of the Right Squad. Kevin, I don't know if you caught the reason why it's the Right Squad. We'll go over that again a bit later. But it's kind of like why crows are a murder. Yeah. Now, you did say, Sean, that you don't need to have binoculars
Yeah.
at the skate park because the birds are so close. But do you take binoculars out if you're going somewhere else? Like I'm assuming that there's a network of footpaths and lightly trafficked roads that you can skate on. So do you get out there with and do you have to have your safety first helmet and your elbow pads and your knee pads on with your binoculars? Because I reckon that's a special look.
The older I get, the more gear I have to wear because I'm clumsy and bursitis is a real nagging thing in knees. I've never had to deal with it. It's the worst. So yeah, I don't. I mean, never a helmet, but I always have binoculars in the car at the very least. So when I'm parked and I know where I'm going to be, the binoculars are going to be close by. If I'm at the skate park, they don't come with me. They don't usually come out because I can't trust anybody to break them. If I go anywhere else, then they're on me most always. And then in terms of like moving around and all of that, if most of the state parks around here have like great pathways and things like that, ways to connect from side to side and all of that, and it's a perfect way to get around. Bikes, skateboards, however you want to move around. We're very fortunate that the folks that drive the land usage in the state parks and things like that are naturally minded, at the very least. Maybe not scientific, but definitely naturally minded.
Yeah, and that brings up that conflict too about what parks are for. Now, people will know that I trained as a horticulturist as well as an accountant, but
cool.
But and Parks and Gardens Management was my major. There's people who use parks who want them to be safe. There's people who use them who want them to be tidy. There's people who want them to be wonderful collections of botanical and horticultural species. Yeah. There's people who only want big trees and no undergrowth because that promotes, vagrants or people hiding in bushes, So there's a whole lot of uses that public parks have, and people have different reasons for wanting them and different ways they want them to be used. So it's not easy for park staff and park management to tick all the boxes. Now, Kevin's here. I'm glad Kevin is here. Mentioning Central Park, Kevin, this is really a question for you. Have you seen Flacco? And have you seen all of the fuss that Flacco's been getting? Major star on. Yeah.
That poor owl.
Well, poor owl, or maybe lucky owl. He's escaped captivity. Actually, is Flacco a he or a she? I can't remember.
I think Flacco is a he, if I remember right. I don't even know if it's ever been mentioned. Actually, I don't, or if I've paid attention to it. It's been so.
I'm pretty sure it has, but I've just been looking at the great shots and how it's getting people in New York to be interested in birding.
Yeah.
And it's at least a month. It's maybe a couple of months now, isn't it? So
I think
obviously hunting.
Well. Yeah. Oh, he's hunting the rat population.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of fear that there's, rodenticide and other things like that could be, but they're keeping an eye on him. He's not hard to find. He's bigger than any other raptor we've got around there, especially, except maybe like a random bald eagle that might show up in the park. So it's like he's huge, he's bigger than great horned owl, and that's our, great horned owls and red-tailed hawks are basically our big raptors for the area.
So it, even though it would be nice to have Flacco find its way home, and I'm being very careful with my pronouns. Someone reminded me today that, and I'm not sure where I stand on this, but because pronouns are a particular preoccupation for humans, I don't reckon the birds actually give a shit whether I call the magpie Mr. Magpie or whatever.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
No, I think the birds know what they're doing, and anthropomorphizing them is a problem anyway.
I agree.
But the fact that people, it's like when that woodcock turned up. No, not the woodcock, or the jacksnipe that turned up. Was it last year in Central Park where people were going to find it, because the jacksnipe's the one that does the groovy bouncy walk, isn't it? So
that's the woodcock.
No, the woodcock. Sorry. So yeah, the woodcock that was doing. So a lot of people were turning up just to have a look at that, and if that gets 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15 kids interested in birds, that's fantastic. As far as
they're super precocious at certain times of the year too, so they're out in the little parts of the garden that are, maybe like the lawns and stuff that are along maybe bush or edge habitat or something like that, but they're right there doing their little they're pretty easy to spot. People will get like 6 or 7 of them at a time at this time of year, so it's great. Birding in Central Park is like a whole other experience.
Yeah, especially, and Kevin, another one, thanks for you to prompt this. I reckon birding in Central Park would be amazing unless you come across Ramble Karen. Remember that woman?
I'll never forget that. That woman.
Yeah. So,
I don't know if anybody in the U.S. birding world could forget that situation. That was something. It's super common still. The same stuff happens all the time. It's just
we have Karens here and Kevins, or I don't know, what should we call them, Kens. But it's usually real anti-vaxxer stuff where they're into, and we call them cookers because when someone's they're gone, they're out there, they're cooked, mate, they're cooked. So we just call them cookers. So not cookers with a C, not cookers with a K, which would mean kookaburras. Yeah. There's a group of cookers up there. No, they're good cookers, not stupid, not crazy cookers. That's a great name for a swamp, isn't it? Kevin's just put up there, the Great Dismal Swamp.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to hang out anywhere dismal. I mean that sounds like I mean, I want the Great Dismal Swamp to actually be the bottom end of the garden at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, that to me would be a dismal bloody swamp. Yeah. Anyway, now let's get back to birds and Kevin's comment. Yeah, Flacco is big, and there are plenty of great horned owls already in Central Park.
Yeah, but he's so much bigger than them. Yeah. I can't imagine that there would be any sort of combat. I think he's like a full head taller. If my crude dimensions over here, but he's like a full head taller than a great horned owl, like at least, which is plenty big enough to kill and consume as prey. It wouldn't even be that hard. I mean, we'd see it here. Great horns and red-tailed hawks will go after smaller hawks and smaller owls all the time. So that would
And
be
but would Flacco demonstrate territorial behaviour if
yeah, right.
if there's no romance in the air?
Does Flacco even know how does Flacco understand like how to express territorial
Well,
behavior as like a
that's it. I don't know the history.
yeah
Was Flacco born into captivity?
yeah
Did he have a
doing
pair?
okay
Did he have a mate? Um, I don't know either. So these are all things that
yeah he's
um,
doing great. I mean he's showing no signs of health issues. He's definitely not losing weight.
yeah,
He's
not losing condition.
doing great in terms of his health.
And because Flacco's taken up residence in Central Park, it would be really difficult to even trap and recapture and rehouse Flacco again. I mean,
I think they could.
I did an episode uh, with, uh, with a powerful owl researcher from here,
Hmm.
and she went through how they do capture powerful owls, and powerful owls are big owls, uh,
Hmm.
and do the research on them. But it's really carefully planned out with the nets in a known flyway. Uh, you have to set them up during the day,
Yeah.
and then hopefully you catch an owl at night. I wonder how you do that in a place like Central Park.
I feel like
Um,
they've gone through the logistics that they've been talking about how they're just gonna ride it out and see how he does and wait to see if there's any distress because they've had no luck keeping up with him. Like he hasn't I know he's established like his spots,
yeah,
but
he's got his trees. I noticed that people know where to find him. Uh, uh, yeah, he's now, uh, yeah, Screechy.
that's
Um,
true. That's true.
Kevin, tell us your sort of special bird interest while you're here. Um, be keen to know. Yeah, I don't reckon I'd want to be anywhere near a horny male great horned owl.
Hmm.
I reckon that would be quite scary. All right, let's go back in time, Sean.
Sure.
When did the birding bug get hold of you?
Oof. It's like a two two-stage burn for me. There was, I grew up with my grandmother who's always was interested in birds, so she would point things out to me. But then I got sick. I got bit by a tick and got Lyme
Oh
disease,
wow,
and it got me bad enough where it stopped me dead in my tracks from like anything I could. It was like hard to breathe, hard to walk around, so I was moving real slow, and I just started to notice like bird song, and then realizing like I recognized some of them, and then that slowly turned into like more walks in different parks, and that turned into buying binoculars, but there was a spark bird and a real spark moment.
your your gateway bird.
Oh yeah, it was a good one too. So my now mother-in-law wanted to see a snowy owl, and it was one of our eruption years. So they were everywhere. She lives in on Long Island, New York. And so Robert Moses State Park is part of, and there's a couple of other beaches that are barrier beaches against the Atlantic, and the snowies love it there. There's lots of coastline. And so we drove around looking for one, and stopped at Robert Moses and took a walk to where thought maybe there could be one. There had been some reports, and there was no owl, but there was this random woman with like a massive camera and all sorts of equipment trudging out through the cold snow around Christmas time, and it was just like windy and gross at the beach, and She's like, are you here for the bluebird? And I was like, the what? She's like, the mountain bluebird. And like this weird moment, I just followed her. And my wife and my mother-in-law are like, where are we going? And we found a stakeout for a mountain bluebird, which is they're a western species, and we're in the northeast of the US. So it's pretty far out of the way. They're not really migratory necessarily, so it's an odd one to be moving around, to be a vagrant. And when realized, I think the moment I realized everything that they were telling me was like, I'm freezing cold, no binoculars, no real context for any reason why anything should be exciting. And then like it all hit me kind of all at once that there was like, oh no, this is a weird occurrence that is happening right now, and nobody understands why this is so cool. And like I lost my mind. I absolutely like down a rabbit hole. It was over. Like binoculars, and I just like started chasing everything. There was like no, there wasn't like you know, everyone's spark bird always seems to be these like common backyard birds that are really striking in the U.S. But it was that dull, smudgy, cold, lost bird. I just like couldn't get over why it was there.
That Australian birders will be surprised, and perhaps birders from maybe Asia, Southeast Asia, maybe South America is. Maybe this is the same in Europe. Snowy owls on a beach, liking that coastal frontier
Yeah.
beach just seems bizarre to me. Now, Shane's in the chat. Shane, you've changed platform. I see there too. Usually I get a Shane with a hat on. It seems, you know, our common owls are like the barn owl, the boobook, or the moorpork owl, maybe some masked owls in some parts of the country, although they're really quite rare now. You know, maybe barking owl. I can envisage seeing a barn owl, maybe not on a beach, but in that coastal fringe, and maybe, you know, but not on the 1st June, maybe on the 3rd or 4th June, you know, in the next sort of ecological zone, but not. So is that sort of normal for a snowy owl to be hanging out on the coast, on the beach?
We get them kind of across the country. It's a lot of farm fields, so it'll be like you know, a little bit more tundra like in the middle America, across like the plains and all of that. But for us, yeah, occasionally agricultural fields they'll pop up, you'll see one, but most of the time they're coastal. The beaches have the kind of like windswept environment, and like are always going to have geese and sea ducks and plenty of things to hunt. So they tend to locate themselves where there's other abundant like winter birds, so
Yeah.
like substantial ones. So yeah.
So tell me about sea ducks, because I love waterfowl, but we don't really have sea ducks here, although I did see a photo and a report of a musk duck, which is a diving duck,
Yeah.
offshore on a coastal beach.
Really.
But when you talk about a sea duck in your area, are you thinking scoters or mergansers or eiders? What are you likely to see?
Scoter, we get black, surf, and white-winged scoter here. One of the subspecies of white-winged, occasionally one of the rare ones, but we're in a very odd zone. We have a sound that separates, that's like, it's saltwater, but it's really like pretty mild tides, so it has a really nice shelter to it, so we get a lot of big rafts of them, of scoter in the middle of the Long Island Sound and things like that. A lot of common eider, um, occasionally some king eider, rare, but occasionally mergansers are everywhere. We have hooded, common, and red-breasted as far as the eye can see. Wherever you want to go, they're everywhere. And then we'll get scaup.
Scop. I call them Scorp, but it's Scop is pronounced correct pronunciation, is it?
Wherever, it depends on where you're from. Depends on who you're talking to. It's the most
Potato,
popular.
potato, tomato,
Yeah,
tomato.
it's we get them. Sometimes a tufted duck will sneak in from the north and things like that. It's for us. It's the excitement is we have often get enough of the rare ducks coming through that it's worth braving the cold, windy beach in February, So to
Yeah.
get eye stinging eyes, and because the alcids might come through, we do
And
when
and and Elsit, okay, I totally don't know what's an
so
Elsit.
for us, like puffins, we have Atlantic
Oh,
and
okay,
occasionally there,
okay.
but we just had dove keys, common myrrh, and razor bills in big numbers coming in, and that was really fun to see them off the beach, which is so unusual for us. Just coming in close to harbor and stuff, it was super fun. Yeah,
Very,
but those
very
are
cool.
average sea ducks, like the scoter, eider, scaup. Yeah.
Stormy, are you here? I just saw your first seen and heard on Twitter. Well done, good, nice shots. Um, if you're watching on Twitter, you can't join the chat. That's an interoperability thing. But if you're watching on Twitter and you'd like to be in the chat, like Kevin, who's just given us some information about the sooty owls again, just come over to YouTube or to Twitter or to Twitch, and you can join in. Now I'm just get through a few of those. Oh, there we are, Shane. Now that's it. There's Shane's hat. We usually get Shane's hat on. And we'll go back to gateway birds in a minute. And I've got a comment from you there, Kevin. We're going to talk about in a minute the spark bird or the gateway bird. But I'm always interested when I'm watching people posting their bird photos from the US, and you've got your own wood duck, which is an amazing looking bird.
They're beautiful.
And nests up in hollows, up in trees, and we've got ducks that do the same thing, and then they jump down. The ducklings jump down from a great height.
It's so funny.
And they're amazing looking birds. But why is everyone taking photos and making a big fuss out of the mandarin duck, which is a beautiful bird, but it's a pet, and it's like when we get the mute swans and whatnot here on ornamental lakes. I mean,
same, yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir on that one. I'll tell you what, mandarin duck. We had a mandarin duck show up at one of our like small ponds, and people were going wild. But the thing that was frustrating is that they're listing it on eBird, and it's popping up and it's like populating, real data.
Yeah.
It's escaped waterfowl. It's just like I can't stand it. The mandarin ducks are gorgeous, right? I agree, but
I want to see them in China and Vietnam. That's where I want to see them. In Korea.
Go to a small lake in Central Park to see it when you like. I mean, I get like if you're not a birder, if you're not a twitcher, if you're not like really, but as a birder, it's hard to understand why you would rather go see like basically a fake duck versus our wood ducks, which are, as you said, they're gorgeous. The males are stunning. The females are absolutely beautiful. They're just as funny. Like loud and their habits are weird and they flock
I'm,
a lot. They're great.
I mean, you've got such a huge amount of waterfowl,
We do, yeah.
and allied, like you said, the murre and I don't know if you get the guillemots and things like that
Yeah,
as
we
well.
do. Yep.
We don't have anything like that. We have the gannets nesting on cliffs and things, but
They're incredible. The diving, their diving displays are so amazing to watch. So
Now Kevin's just mentioned here the
I'm gonna look up an Australian wood duck.
Australian wood duck. Well, if you, I'll share it. I'll bring up that on eBird, and we'll have a look at those so people can see what the difference is.
They're little. Their bills are so little.
Well, the wood duck here was once known as the maned goose.
I was gonna say it looks like a goose.
Yeah, so I'll bring that up in a minute. I've got a couple of things I want to share, so we'll get onto them. Now you mentioned, Kevin, there about the iridescence. So many waterfowl have an iridescence or a sheen and some really complex plumage patterns when you see them in the right light. But yeah, wood ducks are cool. So we'll share that in a minute. But I'm going back to something Kevin said and we haven't shared yet. Everyone in the chat, I want you to tell us, as Sean did, and if you missed why I advertised Wallie Hampton and we're talking to Sean, it's the same person. If you missed the story, let us know and we'll go back over it later on because it's a good story. But I want to know, you can tell me this, Shane, and hopefully Naomi, Deb, Mon, I don't know who's here. Tell us your gateway bird or your spark bird. What was the bird that got you into bird watching? Now, Kevin's copped out on that one. That every bird was like the gateway bird, and all animals. You had to sleep with a favourite dog. I think all of us can go with that, with the puppy on the bed or the kitten on the bed, can't we?
Yeah.
Actually, here's a good point to introduce this shot. You're obviously a cat person, Sean.
We're just animal people in this house. Those are our faithful mousers, however you want to call that one. But they sit and watch the backyard birds with me out the window. Most of the time, that's how I'm alerted to their presence. It's perfect. There's a cat at the window. I quit as fast as I can get my binoculars.
So what do you see frequently in your backyard? Like, what are you sharing your backyard with frequently?
It depends on the time of year. I'm lucky to have a small piece of land, but it's perfectly situated between some like agricultural fields, some lakes and things like that, good wooded areas across the road. So in spring, in summer we have broadwinged hawks breeding across the road. We have a brook, like a stream that runs through the corner of the property, so we always have eastern phoebes. They're kind of a flycatcher, keeping track of our mosquito population for us. We've got, kind of a little bit of everything. It's kind of nice. There's like a little boreal area around us, so when we do get good winter finch explosions, we get to see red crossbills and things like that. We don't get to see that though. That's so cool.
Now, do you get the American goldfinch there?
Yes.
Now there's a female, and that's a male. So so in terms of their differences, the Australian wood duck, which we've got up now, is kind of shell duck, right? In the differences with the male and the female a little bit. But they're quite happy swimming around on water, but you will usually see them grazing. They're birds that are on the shoreline, but there we go. They nest in tree hollows, eucalypt hollows usually,
Cool.
and there's a little family group. So that was
the males look like our kind of like their body coloration, like our gadwall. I don't know if you're familiar. Another duck.
Yeah, and a gadwall. I think we would. It's a dabbling duck, and I think we'd call it a teal. It's sort of a teal size.
Yeah, like a big teal. Our teal, or like other teals, seem to be much smaller. Yeah, they're cool. Doesn't it kind of look like this? That's for me. That's what I would mistake it for here. Like there, I'd be like, what is this? So.
Well, you can see. I'll pop it back into the stream. So if you see on that photo there, you can see the female, the back of the head and along the back of the neck. There's that little bit of fringing, which is why it was called the main goose. Now, Kevin missed our beginning, so there you are. There you are, Sean. You can give him the geography lesson.
I'm from Connecticut, northeastern United States. So I'm like originally from New Haven. It's about an hour from New York. Now I'm a little bit further northeast, so I'm about 2 hours, probably 2 hours drive from Manhattan, maybe 2.5.
Very, very, very cool. Now Shane's told us his gateway birds, the cassowary and the sacred kingfisher. Shane, now the sacred kingfisher, very common, formerly very common. I must admit I haven't seen a sacred kingfisher for years. I've heard them, but I haven't actually laid eyes on a sacred kingfisher for years. But they used to be quite common around the fringes of cities, and so eastern, southeastern Australia, and no doubt more wide-ranging. But Shane, are you telling me that you saw a cassowary early on, or were you just fascinated by this massive, big, angry chook that lived in the rainforest? I think we were all a bit fascinated there. No, I don't know. Now, I did say we were going to be talking about low-carbon birding. I want to share this. I want to share this tweet with you. So this had me gobsmacked. Have you seen this? Can I? So this is from Gianluca Grimalda, and the tweet says, because I don't know if you can see it close enough there. Let's make it full screen there. And I'll pop out the diagram in a minute. I'll just read it out. My slow travel from Germany to PNG for fieldwork research has begun. I plan to travel 39,000 kilometres on land and sea rather than by aeroplane to reduce my carbon footprint. My trip will reduce CO2 by 6.7 tonnes compared to if he flew, albeit still emitting 2.7 tonnes. Here you can follow daily. So he has his thing here. So there's a Google Doc which I will link to a bit later on. So that's fantastic. There's a whole lot of stuff going to be coming up, but here we should be getting the map. There we are. So yeah, he's had to fly from Malaysia to Papua New Guinea, and I'm not surprised about that because I've been trying for years to work out how I can do a East Indonesia trip, but by boat, so that I could get to Darwin, and then I could go into Indonesia by boat and then travel through the Flores and Sunda Islands uh, by boat. Now there are boats and ferries, but you can't really plan ahead. You can't find how to book and everything online from here. You really need to be on the ground. It's like when you go to I go to the Philippines as often as I can, and Malaysia as well. But when you go to the Philippines, you just turn up places and then you find out how to get to the next island or go to the most remote island. And it's very, very difficult to find anyone who can tell you about it, and especially if you want to go bird watching, because I think, what? Bird watching? What? Yeah, why would you want to do that? Now we just need a few others to... hello, Daniel. Nice to see you. So Daniel saw this tweet as well. Yeah, it was pretty amazing, wasn't it? Now, Shane's going to tell us about the cassowary. Oh, cool. So your parents dragged you around in a four-wheel drive or in a Kingswood? Shane, tell us a bit more about that. And as a kid, you came face-to-face with the cassowary. Now, I have seen your next comment, but I agree with you.
How do you survive that?
Life-changing experience. Well, cassowaries aren't always angry. Cassowaries will come out, and there's a lot of caravan parks and whatnot in North Queensland where cassowaries live nearby, and they come out foraging, and, if people are throwing away apple cores and, fruit that they're eating and put the feed out for the birds, they'll scrounge and whatnot, but in mating season, and if you're getting close, they can be very territorial and not happy.
Yeah.
Check out this. Kevin, wow. First job after uni was with the Department of Conservation in PNG. Right, wow. Kevin, you have to tell us more about that. And Kevin, I think you need to be a guest at some time on the show. I want to hear about that, working in PNG. But I want to know where did you go to uni for you to get the first job to be at Department of Conservation in PNG? That's just phenomenal. Mon, how are you, Mon? Emus from Broken Hill to Coonabarra Brand. Mon, you might be surprised to know that when I lived in East Gippsland, I frequently had to slow down because there were mobs of emus and frequently lots of young ones just running alongside the car and then dashing across the front. I actually hit an emu once, which was not a fun experience in the car. So what have we got? Shane, everyone's getting in today. Emus are inquisitive and funny. They are just big chooks. There is just nothing else to be said, but they are just big chooks. Okay, I'm not sure what we missed out on here.
We don't have those big flightless land birds around here.
No, it's if you had have had them, they would have been hunted out of existence, like you.
100%. Or commodified.
Kevin's getting very, very granular with you here. The Elm Street Diner in New Haven.
I don't know Elm Street Diner.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it new? I've never heard of it. Maybe it's there's a lot of good food in New Haven. It's Elm Street Diner.
Now, hang on. Is New Haven anything like Cabot Cove?
I used to live right there. I know where Elm Street Diner is.
All right, there we go.
I've never been there, but I lived right around the corner.
So is New Haven anything like Cabot Cove?
What is Cabot Cove?
Murder, She Wrote, Jessica Fletcher. That was Cabot Cove. So, okay, first Fulbright scholar I've ever come into the same circle with. Welcome aboard, Kevin. That's cool.
Studying what?
Big grey roos. I'm not sure. I think I'm a little bit behind with Mon's chat. HT Monaro. Okay, so Shane was going around Australia in an HT Monaro. For you, Sean, we would probably say that would be a Chevy. Not sure which model, but the Hoon car, a bit like very much a Hoon car. But I'm guessing, Shane, that you went around in a station wagon and not in the sedan or the coupe edition. Oh, actually, most of the Monaros were coupes, weren't they? Our Monaro models.
2 doors, right? They were like a GTO.
Yeah. We need more. It was a Holden, definitely. HT is a particular model. We definitely need some clarification on that. Geez, we're geeking out today. Not very low carbon, I might say.
No.
Toyota Camry wagon. Okay, that's very suburban. Now we're getting some more Kevin info here. University of Oregon with a thesis in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is on my bucket list destination for birding. Here we go. Mon had a HQ 308 Premier. Now that's a top of the line 78 HQ. Mon, no, 77 Holden HQ. A Premier was the top of the line with the badging back then, and 308 big Hoon motor. So, Mon, have you got into low carbon yet, or are you still a Hoon at heart? Shane, so many crossovers today. Big, beautiful Toyota Troop Carrier, big Land Rover. Shane, you'll love it then tomorrow when Bruce Richardson's on talking about, I think he's got a big troopy that he's been travelling around the country in. So, okay, so yeah, Mon very much had the Monaro, the 2-door. 73, is it that far back? The HQ, gee. We had a gold. The family had a gold HQ station wagon. 73. I guess it probably would. What would I have been?
Australia's
pretty young.
Only place that rivals us for muscle cars.
Oh yeah, we're bogans, mate. Hoons, bogans, absolutely. Big part of the culture, although it's kind of winding down now. No one can afford to drive one.
Yeah, around here too. Most of the car companies, I think, are starting to take those big muscle cars out of their lineup. They're getting replaced because they're sanctions and things like that being imposed for emitting lower carbon and all of that.
That's often the reason that people put forward. But no one. Well, Mon, you had one, and as you got here, 3 on the tree. Yeah, that's what it was. It was 3 on the tree. I also had a Falcon with the 3 on the tree. Here we go. Now we're getting really down into it. Mon, I had an EH with the 179 motor, and I wish I had the 173. But yeah, 3 on the tree, 173, first car, HQ wagon. Fantastic, but I'm not tall. I'm only average height, 5'6", 5'6.5", and when you put the back down, the seat down the back, that it still wasn't long enough to sleep in. You had to go diagonal, but then your legs hit the wheel well, so just not quite big enough. The EH. So here we go. Look. Low carbon. Come on, folks. We're going back low carbon. We've got a low carbon journey on the screen, which I think we should talk about. I don't know. I'll see if I can find the rest of his.
There's a lot of treacherous land to cross as well.
Well, somebody did say, and I commented back here. There's a whole lot of stuff in the thread here. He's actually down here. He's actually in Nepal, so he's got to fly. He's missing Myanmar or Burma, obviously, because that's.
I wouldn't go there either.
Yeah, no, I probably wouldn't at the moment. But no, I've got to tell you, so many people told me that when I was when I first went to the Philippines, and I went there after they had the super typhoon Yolanda, was the first time I went. And people said to me, "Oh, don't go to Mindanao." And everything on the news had been Mindanao, the New People's Army, the communist insurgents, people getting beheaded, and all this stuff,
and stuff. Yeah.
And I went anyway, and I went to Mindanao, and I didn't go to that southwestern part, which is so hard to get to anyway. But I did go a lot of places that would be, back country. And all I found was people were really, really amazing. But I did stay a long time in one place, and the New People's Army was active, and apparently they heard that there was a Westerner who had started living there. Now, because I'd been there for quite a long time.
A little too long.
Well, they took an interest in me. They took an interest in me, and as soon as I heard that, people told me I went somewhere else. But as a foreigner, unless you stick your nose into other people's politics, the likelihood of something happening is pretty low, I think. But that's not to say that it's not possible. As we had the people in New Guinea doing research, fieldwork research, who were abducted, and I think somebody was killed. It happens.
Yeah.
But it's a risk assessment you take. I've got to tell you, I would be more scared to visit as a tourist the USA than Papua New Guinea. And I'm not saying that as a joke. I am more likely to be shot and injured, let alone killed, in the US at any kind of public place than I am to be taken captive in New Guinea. That would be my risk assessment.
And you can see orchids and all sorts of fun things in Papua New Guinea, and you're not going to see those in the US. Don't come here. It's not worth it.
Well, you're not going to see birds of paradise there. I'm not even going to see a Carolina parakeet or a passenger pigeon in the US.
Exactly. And all of our warblers, you can just go during, January, February, and see them in the tropics. You don't need to come to the US for those either. All the good stuff you can see in Costa Rica and Cuba and great places like that.
Let's get back onto that high carbon. Look, so everyone's talking about good for towing. Now, let's talk about that for a minute, Mon, because, we haven't really talked much about skating and whatnot yet, and burning on a skateboard. But are we shifting to a point where, I don't even have a car, and I can get to places that I want to go to and see stuff. Are we starting to move away? Are people, and I know we're not en masse, but are people, when they're making decisions about purchasing, now thinking, do I need a caravan? Do I need to tow a trailer? I reckon if and I'm contemplating for my extravaganza, my birding extravaganza, which I want to do on an e-bike, but I am considering buying a small vehicle that I can put the e-bike on, and thinking maybe I can go more places in a shorter period of time. But I don't know. I'm finding it hard to sort of say, do I really need a petrol vehicle? And do I really, do I need to make that compromise? I'm just putting it out there. What does everyone think?
E-bike tech has come a long way. You can carry more. Batteries take you further. They produce more power. There's solar options for recharging. There's the recharging tech, and they use like the old generators and stuff like that. Like if people are using the old wheel generators and things like that to produce more electricity and recharge their batteries. It seems like you could really probably do it the way you want to do it if it was planned well enough, especially if you had the batteries, because e-bikes are great these days. It goes fast. And you guys have no real good. Your e-bike laws are pretty loose in Australia too, right? So,
well, I think depending on the speed that they're capable of going is so, as long as they're still engineered to not go faster than, I think, 60k.
Yeah,
I think
they keep changing the laws.
Yeah, every state's a little bit different, but I don't think you have to register it. It's not a motorcycle. It stays governed as a bicycle. The one thing that, like, my thought of doing East Coast up to, and then into Indonesia and then up to Malaysia and whatnot, is that taking spare batteries, if you have to go in a plane, makes it hard. So what you need to do is
not allowed to take them.
So what you need to do is then forward on in freight as cargo, because you can get, as long as it goes as cargo, and you can then send it on to a destination where you can then go and pick it up at a freight centre and all that. But hey, it would be just as easy to buy another one. When you get to your next place.
Some places, if you call ahead and you have the right bike, I worked for Cannondale for a long time with their e-bikes. So there's plenty of retailers that will, like, especially if you have the right bike, where you can just call over ahead of time or shoot an email and coordinate it with them. They'll be ready for you when you get there. It's like it's so common these days. It's really normal now to have extra stock, especially because there's so many rental places in, like, the Philippines, Indonesia, stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, that was the other thing. Maybe I would think about having a bike in Australia that I go where I want. But then the other thing I'm thinking, why don't I just do it all on foot? And I'm thinking of maybe hitchhiking certainly in Australia. And relying on the birding community to find people, because I want to interview people and do shows and do Photography Friday. So why don't I just organise to find people along the way?
You could coordinate it. You would never. I bet your network goes far enough, Grant, that you could definitely a way to make it like pretty. A pretty transition from place to place.
I reckon so. And even if you can't in the informal networks, there's now all the different share a ride and all those kind of websites and everything now, where you can always find someone. You can get you can hitch rides with truckies. Now we've got a couple of things here. Shane, Mon, I'm coming to you in a minute, but Kevin, I have just worked out who Kevin is. Sorry, I was a bit slow on the uptake there, Kevin. Kevin's part of the Bird Explorers. So if you're on TikTok, you will have seen Kevin and Wodjet, who is Kevin's partner. they have a project where they're trying to take a photo of every bird in the world, and I think you have mammals and you're even into fish as well. Now Kevin's in Fiji at the moment, but he has been spending a lot of time in Thailand. Um, what Wodge is going to Vanuatu, I think, to help sort of pay back some of the kindness that Vanuatu showed to the people of Fiji with the last cyclone incidents. I think I've got that right. So Kevin and Wodge are going to buy an e-trailer from somebody and then go out to see grasslands. Now, Fabbo, have you got room, Kev? Oh, you got room? We'll document it and turn it into podcast. I would love to go on a grasslands field trip into inland Australia. That would be amazing. Now, let's see. We're going to catch up. Shane's been to New Guinea. Yeah, that would just be amazing. Now we'll talk about the issues about cost and everything, and maybe Kevin has got something he could add on this because they've been doing a lot of travel and been a lot of places. Now let's talk about security issues, and I'll bring your experience right into this, Sean, because you're in that northeast US.
Mm-hmm.
Fairly densely populated.
Very
I guess it's not like the South and the Midwest of America with the gun culture there, but I'm pretty sure there's lots of people packing and have got guns in their cars there.
Gun
Personal,
culture. Yeah, national. Don't you?
Yeah. But that point I made about being more worried about going to the US than going to Papua New Guinea, and indeed I would say virtually any other country in the world other than one where they're undergoing political turmoil, active political turmoil right now.
Yeah.
Do you, if you're out and you're taking binoculars with you going birding?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes people think if you're standing near bushes with binoculars in a place where there are other people, you instantly must be some kind of threat, some kind of weirdo. Do you have... do you regulate your behaviour when it comes to birding with that safety issue, that threat that might be there in mind?
I mean, it's a tough one because I'm just a white guy. I can kind of go anywhere I want in the U.S. pretty freely, with a lot less concern than other folks in the country. So it's hard to I have to acknowledge that right away. But there are I find that if you don't look like a creep, then people assume you're probably not, and if they're in, and it often sparks a lot of conversation, which is kind of interesting, especially like, what the heck are you looking at? Like, why are you standing here at this bush staring 90 degrees, like directly above you, or like, what the hell are you doing? It's urban birding, especially like birding in urban environments, are always going to open up those great conversations. I've always lived in places where there was gunshots and violence and things like that around all the time, and those are my favorite places to go, because I think sometimes, because it's just like, people forget that nature's around a little bit, and it's a good opportunity to be like, yeah, there's like a really beautiful flock of cedar waxwings, because you've got some like old ornamental like apple trees around the corner, and like nobody would ever even think to look at how amazing a cedar waxwing is. I don't know. It's tough though, because you have to like approach with respect. It's a pretty gun culture is like a national, like, it's not a joke, it's national in the US, and guns are everywhere, and you don't know who has a gun, who has access to a gun, and who's going to use the gun, because the average American citizen seems to be pretty fucking stupid these days. So
Yeah.
it's
It's
it's like it's not
I
fun.
know. We shouldn't be laughing, but it's a real threat for people. I wanted to ask you if you were a black man
Yeah,
with binoculars walking around public parks.
I wouldn't do that.
That's yeah.
Yeah, I would
That's
never
really
do that. Not without a group, or uh I don't know, a real, and you have, like, I would want to have a real sense of purpose for that, like, some sort of, like, reason to be there, like a group tour or a group of friends or something like that, because it's, in the US at least, like, and especially if you're in the South or in the country, in the rural areas of the United States and places like that, if you're anything other than white, you're definitely, under suspicion. It's definitely not safe, especially right now, because the police aren't people that we can trust necessarily, and especially for black folk, we have to be, in the US, we have to be aware of that. I don't know what it's like to be other places. It seems like cultural, um, like, segregation and stuff like that in Europe and stuff like that is not as big a deal. I don't get to see it because the US also has a horrible media cycle, and we don't really focus on anything but right now maybe the Ukraine. So it's, again, it's like, the it's a we're just consuming ourselves in the United States, you know? We're sort of like chewing our own legs off when you don't really even feel it. So
well. I, I want to note that Kevin made the point about white privilege. That's not only a thing for the US. I mean, there's very definitely uh, white privilege is
yeah,
a thing
absolutely. I mean, South
a thing
Africa,
here. Well, in every nation where there's
Aboriginal.
been
Yeah, I
settlers,
mean, you have
e- even have
every.
a look at just watch some Mexican uh, or Colombian or Brazilian telenovelas as well. I mean,
Mhm.
it's the white, it's the colonizer classes who
Mhm.
dominate the the characters in those things, and the indigenous people are always it's really paternalistic the way they're portrayed. Um, this is a really interesting point too, Kevin. Yeah, no doubt that you. It's also the same in Asian countries,
Yeah.
Kevin. I mean, I got treated well and am treated unbelievably differently in the Philippines than most people would be. Less so in Malaysia. In Malaysia, as a white person, there's almost some real hostility um, in parts of Malaysia
Yeah, I can
to,
imagine.
towards you. But Malaysia also has a big cultural divide between Chinese, ethnic Chinese, and Malay. But they're all things you need to know before you go there, and then you don't just turn up and be a dickhead. Um, like there's certain things that you would not wear in terms of and slogans on t-shirts or even representations on things
Hmm.
in t-shirts that you just wouldn't do. It's the same. It's the same. I wouldn't turn up in America and start wearing either a Trump t-shirt or a Biden t-shirt because it's none of my fucking business, right? I'm not voting there. I might have my opinions, but it's not my opinion to tell anyone. It's not my place to tell anyone in the US what to do with your own bloody democracy. But I might venture an opinion about don't cut that bloody forest down if it's the last habitat for a particular bunting or something. I might venture an opinion based on that, but I'm not going to tell you that
Well,
your
boy.
politics, generally left or right,
I
are,
mean,
are fucked up. Even though I,
we need all the help we can get. So.
yeah, but you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it from anyone from Australia or the UK or anything telling
Yeah,
you how to do things. We've
yeah,
got more than enough shit in our own country to clean up.
yeah, absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
But
Where
but
there's
look,
colonizers, there's shit, right?
yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, and whether it was economic colonisation, whether it was a push for land, whether it was a push for religion, you know, we've all got stuff to sort out. So, but yeah. Don't really know where I was going with that. It wasn't really.
It all led to land theft and resource hoarding. It didn't matter how. It doesn't matter the reason why. That's just where it always seems to go.
Yeah.
And loss of species. So.
Yeah, I mean that's where my stuff always comes from, and that's what I'm always tell people that when it comes to biodiversity, habitat retention, habitat repair, I'm an activist. Right? I mean, and that's the whole point of doing these shows. And
I hear you. I think it's great. I mean, that's what you did on Foul Mouths on my old podcast. So I was telling you earlier, we started out just like we were a bunch of beginner birders. We were friends before birds, and it all happened it was just the way it happened for us. We're like, yeah, let's just do this. Like, we have great rapport. Let's record it. It could be fun. And immediately it turned social. It turned political because we're just that. It's just the type of people we are. But it was like we stood no chance. It just like became so crucial, like realizing that we're like representative of like this massive group of other white people, and there are so many other people that just don't get a chance. And that's just in the US. I mean, like we never get to venture outside of speaking to people outside of our own country. It's scary. And that the worst part of it is that like we're just in it for birds. And they're the birds are the ones that are showing us what we're doing. And for me, that was when it became like something I couldn't just be passive about. I couldn't like shut up about. So I appreciate it's all connected. I mean, our flyways are changing, and that's because our populations are moving and they're massing different places, and we're heating things up, and we're putting up giant spinning fucking fans to generate electricity.
Now let's talk about that. I interviewed a chap called Hamish Cumming, who has been fighting the fight against wind farms in Western Victoria, which is where the most southern and western population of Brolga, one of our native cranes, but our endemic native crane, is still breeding in Victoria. Now, I'm totally sympathetic with the issue of wind farms being a danger, but the research that's been done shows that wind farms are not a significant killer in most cases of birds. But the problem we have, and we're seeing it here in North Queensland, and of course a project that's being supported by one of Australia's richest men, Andrew Forrest, is they wanting to site a wind farm in pristine rainforest habitat on the top of a hill because it's a really good place to put them. But I think wind farms are going to happen.
Yeah.
If we're going to decarbonise. The issue isn't to everyone to go, no wind farms. That's not the issue. The issue is to stop making all the planning mistakes that we've already made for 100 years. Stop making the same mistakes again. And if we can do that, and if we can stop giving publicly owned or controlled land to multinational interests for the generation of power, the same that we did for every other form of power, well then maybe we won't get it wrong. But if we're going to keep saying we need a wind farm, therefore we need to have the cheapest land. What's the cheapest land? Land the government owns that can give us to create jobs. That's the playbook. Instead of going, what's the most suitable piece of land with all of the other factors put in, and those factors have to include biodiversity and habitat retention for species that aren't rare, because that tends to be the issue. They go, there's no endangered or critically endangered species in this tract of land, so what we'll do, we'll clear it so that the likelihood of the species that aren't critically endangered or threatened, they'll likely in the next 50 years become critically endangered or threatened, because we're going to reduce all their habitat too. It's just bonkers, but we're just doing it over and over and over again. Let's talk about Kevin's mum for a minute too.
91 president of the Virginia.
OLAP, the OLAPs. I like that. I like that.
Good.
I just want to recount something that we were saying before we sort of went properly live, Sean. When Trump was being put up as a possibility for a president, we were just laughing our heads off over here. You know, seriously, the Apprentice guy, that obvious lunatic, you know, and you know the guy who went broke running a casino, actually not so monumentally smart that he had controlled 3 casinos that competed with each other. Really had a real grip on how to maximise the. That'd be like me running 5 podcasts about birds and releasing all of them on a Monday every week, and wondering why none of them is getting more than 50 downloads. Funny that, yeah. Whoa, gee.
No one took it seriously until it was too late. I think not enough people took it seriously until it was too late. At least that's for sure. We were all like, "There's no way this is going to happen. There's no way this is going to happen."
And I'd like to apologise to the people of the United Kingdom and the USA and many other parts of the world for Rupert Murdoch, even though he was born before I was. But Australia has to.
We're all responsible for some atrocities. Every country seems to produce somebody.
Yeah, well, Canada had, what was his name? Conrad Black. You guys have had plenty of.
We produce them every 10 minutes here.
So I mean, your current Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. I mean, Elon Musk. I mean, what a clown show Twitter has turned into. Murdoch is going to walk away totally scot-free. I'm sorry to say. Hi Naomi too. Naomi's just given us some Facebook love. Nice to see you here too. Oh, anyway, that's all too political. I want to go back to something that Shane said before we got too political, because I want to talk about this issue. Here we go. Electric vehicles are hopeless in the outback. Now, Shane, I'm wondering whether it's not only electric vehicles, because it does take a long time to charge.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an array of some sort to charge up your batteries. Isn't the problem not so much, I'll look at it a different way. Isn't the problem the speed at which we want to travel the problem?
Yeah.
I.e., if I do my birding tours by e-bike and I am going to recharge in many locations just with unfurling a pretty low efficiency portable solar charger, doesn't that, if it takes me 2 days to charge up, okay, that's 2 days of birding. That's 2 days of getting to know a spot. That's 2 days of finding lizards and whatnot. But most people don't travel that way. Most people want to travel, they want to go somewhere, look around and travel 800 Ks.
Convenient.
And get to the next spot, right? And get around Australia in 2 months. No, getting around Australia is a 3-year proposition, I reckon. But obviously not everyone can do it that way. But it's the way we set the goals and the rapidity of our travel, which makes electric vehicles a problem. If we didn't have the technology of the internal combustion engine, and we were in the olden days, you can only travel as far as the horses, and recharging and resting the horses would allow you to.
Yeah.
So I reckon we just need to have a look again at how we do things, and that this could maybe become the norm. That, I mean, I've always had this idea. People tell me, "Oh yeah, I've been to Europe. Yeah, oh yeah, I've been lots of places in Europe." And I go, "Oh, so how long have you spent there?" "Well, the first time I went for 3 weeks, and the second time I went for 2 weeks, and the third time I went for a month." I go, "Well, so you've either seen lots of places in Europe for not very long, and you didn't really see much, or you've seen a few places quite well." That's like someone, I don't know. I just get a bit grumpy about the way we do things, and that we're not changing. We're just not changing.
I'm all for it. I was able to not own a car for like 10 years of my adult life. And I just rode my bike basically everywhere I could, or took public transport, but as much biking, mostly bike riding. I feel like it's inconvenient, but that's human. That's like our own human problem. Like convenience is one of our biggest time and convenience are our two biggest problems, I think, and money maybe.
Yeah, well, money's obviously a limiting factor, but so is time. Mm-hmm. But if we reassessed what we could reasonably do in a set amount of time, mm-hmm. That's where it comes down to what reasonableness is these days. And I'm not having a crack at you, Shane, either. It's only a year or so ago that, I got rid of my car in 2014. So okay. I'm 9 years. It's almost 9 years without a car by choice. And often I think about, wouldn't it be good if I could get there? But then I look at how much it would cost me to get into a car to do the four-wheel driving. I used to have a Land Rover. I had a Land Rover Series 3 and loved it. But now the entry price to get into a car means if I did the slow travel, I can spend so much more. I can afford to spend more time doing it with a swag and a bike, than I possibly could if I had to reinvest in a large vehicle to do all the stuff. And if you can use the resources that are already there are already tour companies, there are already people going to these places. So hitch a ride, pay the cost of getting to somewhere, get on a truck, get on it.
You're removing yourself from that cycle of like global commodification. Like you're one step out further away from being like wrapped in that. Like,
and how often do you hear town planners, municipal bodies saying, "Look, most of the people that drive into our city each day are coming in, one person in each car." And everyone says, "We've got to eliminate that and car sharing and everything." Why don't we extend that to the way we do our holidays? I remember the first time I travelled around. No, actually, it's not the first time. It's probably about the third time I went independently travelling with my bike. First time I went with a group of mates from school. But I went to northwestern Victoria. But I used to just go to either the general store or the bakery or the roadhouse. And if I saw people with large vehicles and bike carriers, I'd just go and say, "Hello, I'm Grant. Do you mind asking if I ask where are you going? Could I hitch a ride with you and stick my bike on the back because I can see you've got a rack?" Now, most people said, "Piss off," they don't want to be bothered. But some people are happy to have someone to, talk at for the next 5 hours, or to say, "Hey, have you heard the latest crappy country music?"
Yeah.
I think we need to sort of reassess, and people always say it's not safe. Well, I reckon nothing is safe. But statistically, people are more worried about their kids going outside nowadays. But statistically, your kids are safer now doing stuff in the street than when I was a kid. That's just what the statistics tell us. You either don't believe it, or you know,
I
not.
I believe it. I believe
So,
it.
just that the publicity is that all these terrible things are going to happen. And frankly, if you don't send your kids to church or to the Scouts or to be babysat by your family, if you don't do those three things, your kids are extremely safe.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, they're the people who are going to harm your kids.
Absolutely. I mean, that there's real numbers for those to support that. We know that.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the numbers tell us. Mon's extremely correct. Public transport is an issue in so many places.
We don't have it here.
Yeah, my point, Mon, is that if we framed our thought more towards community transport that isn't necessarily provided by the government, but that we reached out to each other more, that we could probably get to more places. But that's not encouraged, because if I can get around Australia bird watching and not take one commercial tour, well, I'm not a job creator. I'm not participating in the economy and all that. But, you know,
birdwatching is one of the few standing hobbies, I think, where you could still show up at a stakeout for a rare bird, have never been in that locale before, and still find someone's couch to crash on and probably cook you breakfast in the morning. You know, it's like one of those few hobbies where it does feel like the community network is so like-minded that is a safe, like, it's as safe as it's gonna get. You know what I mean? I think it's so nice like that, that we do have that, like, community element to what we do.
I've got to say, Mon's just said she didn't have a car between 2007 and 2010. When I lived in Brisbane, I rarely used public transport, but I did have to do it a few times. If I was in a hurry, it was awful. If I wasn't in a hurry, if it took me 3 hours to get somewhere, you don't care, right? And that's how it is for me now too. If I have to take two buses, a train, and 2 trams to get to something, which is, well, I have regular medical appointments, 2 buses, a train, and a light rail. But for me, the whole day is taken up with going there and coming back. But I don't care, because I don't have a car. I don't have to worry about where am I going to park. I don't have to worry about if it's $10 to park somewhere. I don't know. But it takes me a lot of time. But guess what? I get to people watch. I get to listen to podcasts. I get to read some books. I get to catch up on some news. So that all happens. Now, what we're going to race through. I can see. I'm sure you're looking at the clock there. Sure.
It was our fake daylight savings time, so we actually just my time is all off anyway.
Now we can talk about that too in a minute too. Now, Kevin's never owned a car. I think that's pretty cool, Kevin. And I reckon if you've never had to, I've got to think. I think of all the money that I've wasted on cars. I think of all the money that my family, I'm thinking my dad mostly, wasted on cars. I mean, you need them, but I think you need them less nowadays than you did a few years ago. And now, especially where we've got work from home more as a normal thing for so many of us. Again, that's probably a privileged thing too, I must say. I mean, I always feel like I'm privileged that I can do what I do sitting at home rather than having to go out and flip burgers or something else.
Sure.
Um,
100%.
so mom thinks she'll be dead before we've got good public transport, or that we don't need to
Yeah.
get things around. Yeah. Um,
Your
I,
community transport idea is really interesting, though, and it's something like that. One of my things that I always harped on when I was in school was like small economy life, like local economy, like even in the US, like where everything's so globalized, we've lost sense of like things like that, giving people rides places, just like picking up a trash run for somebody if you can't, like, don't have a truck, or like just stupid little things like that that people don't do anymore that used to be so commonplace in small economies, and we've like commercialized so heavily and globalized. It's
yeah,
insane. Like, we can't do that.
but there's also some societal things too that have changed. That
Yeah.
I, I don't think people are less good or less friendly than they ever were before. I
No.
think we allowed ourselves to get trained into being busy.
Yeah.
And and this thing too, I'm always amazed when I meet people with young kids. I don't have young kids. I don't have any kids. Um, but I'm always amazed when people tell me, "Oh, our Saturday mornings is we've got ballet, then tennis, then this, then that, then this, then that." That's just completely foreign to me. We had cricket or football or basketball or netball or scouts, or I lived on the coast,
Yeah.
bought a boat, built a boat, but you didn't do boat and orchestra and tennis and cricket and art classes and this. What the bloody hell happened? I mean, you know,
The yes
and
culture.
and, and if you've got a kid who's into nature, well then let them go bird watching and let them go camping. And if they don't learn the oboe, who cares? If they don't play football as well, or softball, or soccer as well, who cares? How did we let ourselves get hurried into all of this all the time? Um, I mean, is that really a thing? Like, I just see it in TV and movies and all that, that busy middle class people with kids
I'm
are
from
always doing this. So.
the Northeast is of the U.S. is well known for being like the busiest a part of the country. We're always on the go, like very rude, very short, very quick, moving all the time, overloading our schedules. Like, it's a it's like this standard New England stereotype, especially just like unfriendly, too busy for our own good, and it's not a it's it's born of truth for sure. I mean, it's real. Yeah, we're too fast here. Nobody even looks around. People are so funny with birds are the thing for me. Like, when you talk about a species and somebody's like, we have that many species
Yeah.
here. My state list for Connecticut, just my state is like I think I'm at like 320 species now, which is a lot for Connecticut. We're not a very big place. Um, and
But
people, we
you have the migration, so that helps you get your numbers because you've got birds moving up and down.
But yeah, but they also don't understand. Yeah, they don't understand the migratory capacity of like the of some of these species. They don't understand like the concentration that moves through the United
Oh,
States.
did you see that radar stuff that was out? I think last week or the week before,
Yeah,
with the phenomenal numbers of birds. I mean, it's going to be a big year for just the sheer gross numbers of birds in North
survival
America. Yeah.
survival rates are a lot higher because our weather has been a lot more mild in terms of temperature spikes and things like that. And we're for sure, like, I'm seeing American robins flock up, and sing a lot earlier and a lot greater numbers because they didn't leave. So usually they're gone. We get moving flocks that come from Canada, come south, but they don't disperse. It's not happening that way right now. We're seeing a lot of like odd. migratory behavior, staging that doesn't usually happen, birds singing that don't usually sing here. Just things that I've noticed over the last few years because of weather changes. So our when I'm looking forward to our first big spring movement, because I feel like it's going to be the most colorful warbler year we've had in a long time. So,
Yeah.
but that's not a good thing.
One of the things that I'm always mindful of when we talk about how things are so different now because of how things are changing, I'm
Yeah.
generally prepared to accept that in terms of climate being a factor that's influencing this. But we always need to be guarded about the assumptions we make, that there are far more people noticing birds and knowing what they are than there was 50 years ago, and especially 100 years ago. So that's right. So,
Vagrancy. I mean, vagrancy in any species is right there. We know that the Patagonia picnic table effect, that whole stupid thing, it isn't. There's no magnet. It's just a bunch more people looking for rare things because they just figured out that it happened. I mean, there's always.
But it's even simpler. I think it's even simpler. Like, it's the effect. Like, if you go and buy a white, let's say Mon. If Mon went and bought a white Camry wagon from 19, I don't know, where Camry's a thing in 2004.
Yeah.
If you went and bought that model, all of a sudden they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Because you know what to look for. You can tell it apart 100%. From a Commodore wagon or from a Corona or whatever. So a lot of that is, once you become a birder and you can tell if we're in the UK, a chaffinch from a bullfinch, then all of a sudden, or from a hawfinch, all of a sudden you're seeing them everywhere.
When things moving, and like, how did you know what it was so fast? Like, eventually you just know what you're looking at all the time. A bird's a bird. I mean,
that's right.
Physiologically, you can't, anatomically, you can't make them not a bird. So you already know how to square them up when you're seeing them move fast across your vision. So,
as Mon's just pointed out, the same as when you're pregnant, you notice that everyone else is pregnant. Yeah. So you go from it's a bird, and then you go from being it's a brown bird, or it's a black bird, or it's a little brown bird, to being a little green bird.
Yeah.
And then you get to recognise the habit or the shape or the way it flies, and then it becomes a thrush or a finch.
And how
or
fast it happens,
or a warbler.
You're like, no, obviously that was a warbler, and everybody's like, what? Like, why do you know that?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a vireo, I can tell you that. Like, how did in the US, it's the same bird basically. Like,
that's right. Well, I like how people can tell the junco from a warbler, from an oriole, from a bunting, really quickly. I mean, one day when you've all put your guns away, and I come to the US, I'll look forward to that. I might have to see all your birds by going to the northern state of Canada, or Canada.
Wait till a little later when they're breeding and go to Canada, because that's where most of the good birds are breeding anyway. We don't get the best breeding warblers. We just get a lot of them come through. You'll go to Boreal Canada, you get to see all the good stuff there, and then you skip the US.
Yeah, go down to Mexico, and then go down to Panama, and
our winter, right. And that's where the rest of them will be. You never need
Costa Rica
ever. Boring. All the migration, anything that's migrating, that's what you want.
And then I can go down to all those shithole countries like Ecuador, and Bolivia and Brazil and Guyana and whatnot.
Ecuador, though, I mean, for botany, you're talking the greatest collection of orchids.
Per square, or almost plants per square meter, or per square kilometre.
There's more
Um,
plants there that are undescribed than there are described, I think, in Ecuador alone. So
Stormy, nutmeg mannequin. Is that a reference to what we did last week for the very hard to identify birds we did last Monday? Or are you just seeing nutmeg mannequins all the
all
time since we actually talked about the nutmeg mannequin last week? And for those of you who were here for the session with Holly last week, and if you didn't catch the conversation with Ricky on Friday, Ricky's take on what we considered, and actually I think I've still got these photos in here. I do. We were talking about these birds, and having trouble identifying these birds, and my take was that they were probably the spice mannequin or the spice finch, or a group of aviary hybrids, but there was another suggestion from, and actually, Kevin, you might have a thought on this too, being familiar with Australia. The other suggestion we had from Ricky was that they were plum-headed finch. And it was Stormy or H2 Rider, depending on which platform. They were Murray's photos for that bird. So that was an interesting one. Again, we had two bird experts saying it was something different. I'm not a bird expert, by the way. Let me say ID expert.
not a bird I've ever seen. Nothing I'm familiar with. I can't be any help with that.
Yeah. No, but that's where bird watching is such a great way to get to know each other, is that you can talk about the things and the things that you each notice that will probably be different. Everybody tunes into a different thing, which is why we all like different field guides. Or
for me, a bird like that reminds me of trying to decipher like our flycatchers. Like we have the trails flycatchers here, alder and willow, and all of these, and they all look just the same. There's like the differences are so minute, and like sometimes you just don't believe that people even understand that. I think like we have them all everywhere we go, right? You're like, what is that? It's another gray bird. What am I looking for here? Like, which register am I looking at? Like, you need like a small corner of a tail feather to discern. Like, it's so annoying.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Mon's just made the point, as part of our discussion with some photos that Mon sent us, both Holly and I thought that the eagle was possibly a wedge-tailed eagle. Well, I must admit, I wasn't that confident, but one of the views seemed to show a wedge-tail. Now, probably the most famous twitcher in Australia said, "Nah, that's a white-breasted sea eagle juvenile." Now, Ricky also went with that, Mon. So I think we've gone with white-breasted sea eagle juvenile. I think we're right with that. Now, Kevin's got a thought about that. Kevin, I didn't think the
all of the finch experts.
Well, it's interesting here because the photos are atypical. Because if we look at the plum-headed finch, the plumage around the cheek and around the face just isn't typical, especially in these ones here. And when I look at these ones, this sort of suggests to me. Now, obviously, we've got the parrot in there as well, but the plumage on this. I mean, I wouldn't stake my life on it without watching them more myself, but I reckon there's highly likely to be possibly a population of aviary escapees, and perhaps the one of the mannequins, and it could be. It's in suburban Sydney, and the spice mannequin happens around there. But again, these are all aviary escapees, and people do dumb things like they have to move house and they can't find a place with an aviary where they're going to, so they just open the door and let their stuff out, which is dumb, but people do it. So Kevin said, so Murray, Stormy, pop them up into iNaturalist, put your location on them, and somebody's going to be an expert. I think people often try and jam something into an identification too without thinking that they could be, like mannequins are so totally, they do breed and interbreed, and birds that have a long history in captivity often have splits and pieds and Latinos and Lutinos, not Latinos, Lutinos. So there's a whole lot of things that it could be without knowing for sure. That's awful. Mon, I know this isn't what you're talking about, but that's awful that Sean disagreed with me and Holly, isn't it? So anyway, not at all. Actually, not at all. Yeah, it's awful that people let things out.
Yeah.
Right, Scott. Anything you'd like to bring up about low carbon birding, since that was the topic that we were nominally talking about?
We brought it up for a second.
Yeah. I want to ask you if you've got into photography with birding, Sean, or just and the other thing I like to find with people, you mentioned you've got your list for the state.
Mm-hmm.
So bird nerderism is a spectrum, I reckon.
Absolutely.
Right. So have you got a house list?
Yep. I have a yard list. So
you've got a yard list, you've got a state list.
I have a couple that I'm very keen on. My county in every state in the U.S. is broken up in counties. Of course, we have to make everything. Yeah. You got to make everything granular. It's that whole. So my county list and my yard list are important to me. My county list especially has been like a big one, but my yard has proven to be a really fruitful because of just the odd layout that we have. We're in a kind of a hollow, so we don't get a lot of wind. It kind of passes right over us, so we're like it's been great. So there's a ton of great birds here, but yeah, I love my county list. I've been a little lacking lately on it, like a little low motivation to chase things because the numbers it's getting harder and harder to find stuff. So, I'm sitting at I'm at 220 species for my county, which is before I moved here about 3 years ago. There was like pretty low numbers for year listing, and a friend of mine and I had like annually broke the county record for like 5 years, like back and forth, when finally a concerted effort was put in. We're on year 4. He was trying for 5, but we've been, just like it's like coverage. Like there's no coverage in areas, and you see like it originally was like 100 birds, and then we got to 200 species in the year, and everybody's like, whoa, what's up in your area now? What's nesting there? When are you seeing these things? Like, yeah, you guys like don't go to the hot spots. Like it's frustrating because like if you're not the listers around here that are very competitive, they only go to hot spots. They don't actively search for new areas, and how are we gonna know what's going on? Like,
I think that's interesting, isn't it? And there's a conversation Mon and Shane are having, and we'll sort of talk about that a bit in a minute. But part of the delight for me with birding is getting to know another place.
Yeah,
whether it's a park, or whether it's a suburb, a neighbourhood, or whether it's a stretch of frontage on a creek or a river. but you
Yeah.
get to know it well by watching the birds
Yeah.
and going there more than once
You know what
because
you know what bugs are there, you know
that's
what
right.
plants are growing,
That's right.
you
You know
know
what's fruiting. You know what they're eating. You
100.
know what they're eating at different times of year. Um,
It's so much to learn from one bird species and
yeah.
like
Now,
10 square feet or meter, like 1 square meter, you know, like
now, Mon's brought up that point about competitiveness, and I want to extend it a little bit. That if you aren't someone who is ticking off lists and knows their numbers, you don't even think about it. But I get really annoyed when I see groups of bird watchers at one place,
me too.
making life difficult for other people and for the birds
Yeah,
and for other animals, just
yeah,
because they're so fixed on ticking things off. That's a
yeah.
great hobby for a whole lot of reasons, but I, I, I want to ask you, and also I'd like Kevin, if you're still here, to chip in on this, because Kevin's done bird watching in a lot of locations. Have you got a social group friendship that has arrived out of birding? I don't mean you go birding with them, but I mean the spin-off where you're talking about things, where you're confirming identifications, where you're talking about your
Yeah,
special spot. You know,
I do. Only a couple of people. I keep a
your
small
friends
group.
close, and
It's
your
more
friends
about
close and your enemies closer.
it's a lot of so there's a lot of private land in our area. So land access is a huge problem. And the idea of private property in the way that we have it here especially is really just it's asinine. It doesn't make sense. Like why how is acres of woods someone's private property? It baffles me, especially considering the way that they're allowed to use it. And that's neither here nor there. Like it just there is you need to have like a small circle of people you can trust that are good at IDs, because the records committees want, if you're trying to be productive without being competitive, you still have to be discerning and accurate. So I think like we're super focused on breeding collapses, we're super on hybrid zones, all of these things that are like are happening because of human encroachment and stuff like that. So we're like it's hard up here. It's mostly it's mostly consumers, which I think that listers are consumers, in the truest sense, um, trampling, vegetation to get a picture of a green-tailed towhee. But now suddenly there's no foraging habitat for like all of the sparrows that relied on that thistle that you just trampled. It's just like there's like so much loss. I chased the Tarek sandpiper to its little spot in Rhode Island, and when I was there, one of the first people there at like 5 a.m. And when I turned around and saw how many people were behind me and just watching the dunes get trampled, these things that are sculpted by by, by time and wind and water, like, and you're just destroying habitat for just to get a glimpse of a bird that you could just travel to see. And granted, you have to go to like some odd islands to see that bird, but who cares? Like, I mean, take the chance. I also don't like a lot of like global travel for birding. I think that there's a lot to be said about like the amount of travel that birders do and the amount of their carbon footprint. This exactly is massive.
That's
Like,
exactly why
it's really
I
hard.
was interested in this, and actually Kevin would be good to talk to about that. Let's just break in. I just want to pop this
That's
up
good.
again.
Like that, we don't have that kind of camaraderie here that I think in the US. Like landowners don't want to know, because if we find something nesting, then they suddenly can't plant their crops. or they have to like, open their land up to the or whatever environmental groups are like and stuff, and people don't want to deal with that because
We,
our
we
laws
have
are
that
good.
we have that same conflict here, and it's also evident in the UK. The
Yeah,
UK have a different concept of access because of their the
land ownership
the
there too.
no. There's the land ownership, even though it's different in terms of the hereditary and the class ownership and whatnot.
Yeah.
But they have a right of traversing. They have actually the right to walk across lands to get places, and that's why there's the styes on all the fences
Oh,
and things like that.
I
So
didn't know that.
they actually have access rights that we don't have here, but we have all those same issues about whose land in it. But that's why I always like to pose the question: who owns the bird? Right?
Yeah.
Because we have federal laws to protect them, and actually, I even come down more fundamentally. Why do we protect a bird? Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Right? If the government is responsible for protecting it, does the government own it? And if there's the responsibility to protect it, but if it's on your land and nesting on your land, do you own it?
no, not in the U.S.
But these are all the concepts that we don't deal with because they're hard.
Yeah, well,
If,
they don't.
if,
It doesn't even
if,
get posed.
well, this is why I always bring them up, and why I'm a bit of a broken record about it often. If we recognise Indigenous land rights and we are handing land back, and that we have a bird that has an Indigenous name, don't they own it?
It's hard
I mean,
because the argument goes further. The argument for that, like the indigenous name, like, and it might, a different. You can keep going back, like who?
that's why we need to confront
Yeah,
the issue and talk about it,
I
and
agree.
that we always don't talk about it. If you own a tree, right? So if a landowner owns land and owns the tree that is on the land, does
Nothing.
it own the birds that nest in the hollow in that tree? And if they do, why do we need national laws to protect birds if they're owned by that person? If they're not owned by that person because they're migratory and they go somewhere else, or they just wanderers, they go where they like. But we never seem to talk about these concepts. If nobody owns them,
No, yeah,
what?
that's really
Right?
interesting.
If nobody owns them, then who is compelled to protect them?
It's also speaks to harvest and things like that. Like we can strip, you can strip your own property of like every bit of organic matter, but you cannot kill a bird and harvest
Yeah,
that bird from there.
but you can cause the bird to die by removing everything it needs.
Yeah.
So these are all the things I like to talk about.
No,
And
I'm with you. Yeah.
and I'm not pretending I know the answers because different communities are going to have different standards that they want to apply. So yeah, they're difficult. Now, Kevin's been fantastic and given me the opportunity here with this comment where he mentions Kate Ravitch. Now, of course, Kate is well known in the bird watching community, done a lot of work in Australia, but now particularly on King Island. But I just want to encourage people, if you want to know about Kate Ravitch, of course, there's a bird emergency episode where I talked to Kate Ravitch. So, thanks, Kevin. I'm not sure that you knew that you were giving me the opportunity to do a plug, but you can go back and hear my conversation with Kate. And look, Kate's still super influential in in the communities that she's involved with and protecting three of the rarest birds in Australia that are endemic to King Island. Here we go. These are Kevin's Birds Guides Photo WSP. What are you telling me here, Stormy? Do you want me to check this one out? Yeah, Birds Photo Guide WSP. I can't easily do that without going over here and typing it in, so I'll do that. And Kevin, you mentioned your photography ethics. I think we all sort of have started to take those on board, haven't we? Is that a gap or not? Let's see. Underscore. What's WSP? Is that World Society of Photographers or something, or Wildlife Society of Photographers? Let me just see if that's going to come up. Western Sydney Parklands. No, that doesn't look like it. Images for. No, that's not coming up into anything that I can find, Stormy. So you'll have to. Oh, Western Sydney. Okay. Kevin, you've got a cottage on King Island, so that's fantastic. Well, Kevin, let me know when your next trip is. I missed the count, the last count. I want to get down there for the next lot of counts if I can. Okay. I don't know. I can't bring that one up. Maybe I'll link to it when I find it. But when I've searched for that, I've found a whole lot of things that are obviously not what you're talking about. Unless it's Western Sydney Parklands, if it's the Bird Photo Guide, let me see if that's it. You can tell me whether this is what you meant.
Oh yeah, I found it. It's
is
like
this
the Western Sydney Parklands photo guide to like species here.
Yeah, it looks like an ID. Is that what you're looking at? Yeah. So it looks like an ID.
PDF with a poster.
Yeah. So I'm not seeing ethics or anything here. So I just didn't know what it was. For. I like how the photos have got the little checkbox space in the corner, so you can tick them off.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice. Common miner, common sailing. Oh, red-whiskered bulbul. That reminds me. I'll remove this. Now, red-whiskered bulbul, and we also have the red-vented bulbul in small numbers. Indian, Southeast Asian birds and aviary escapees here. Not terribly exciting for anyone else, and I reckon nobody else would possibly have ever noticed it. When I was on the bus yesterday going through from my place up to the shopping centre, we go through some suburbs. Most of the street trees are established large, big gum trees now, but most of the gardens are European-style plantings. I reckon I saw on a TV antenna a red-vented bulbul, one, and from probably 40, 50 metres away, as I was travelling past on the bus, but I got a good look at it. I don't think it could have been much else. So that was pretty exciting.
All populations have been established in the different parts of the U.S. Out west.
I'm going to pull it up because it's not a bird that I had seen before. But yeah, there we go. That's Animalia.
I want to see a masked lapwing. That would be great.
Well, that I get them now. That's almost the positioning that the bird was in when I saw it. but it was sitting on up on a TV antenna. But that was what that's exactly what I noticed: the black face, the posture, the length of the tail, and the browniness. So now I'm not ticking it off because I didn't get a good enough a good enough list. Yeah. Oh, the red-whiskered bulbul must be a pest in Perth, is it? It's it used to be more prevalent in Melbourne in the eastern suburbs than it is now, but I don't see many people on there. You're saying that red-whiskered bulbul, sorry, not red-whiskered bulbul. Let me go back one more. Red is the nutmeg mannequin or the spice mannequin on your Western Sydney list, is it? Oh, yes, there it is down there. Now, Stormy, interesting. On that, let me bring this up again. Remember, I noticed that the markings on the flank. That's a good picture that shows off those little markings on the flank. So yeah. Stan's just arrived. Hello, Stan. Stan documents the things that are going on Kangaroo Island. You know where Kangaroo Island is, Sean?
I've heard of it. I do not know where exactly it is.
It's on the south coast of South Australia, on the southeast coast of South Australia. So island dweller. So that's cool. What have we got now? Michelle Yeoh. Oh, she got it for everything at totally everything everywhere, all at once at the same time, no matter where you are. Yeah, cool. I love Michelle Yeoh from what was the latest Star Trek iteration that she was in. She was really cool in that. So, Stormy Murray, let me ask you, having seen that picture of the spice mannequin or the nutmeg mannequin on your Western Sydney Parklands guide, do you reckon my thought might have been pretty good? Interested to know that. Kevin, has since you're watching the Oscars, does that means Michelle Yeoh beat Aussie Kate? But has anyone punched anyone in the face yet tonight? Now, Kevin's doing my job for me. Kevin, if you go through my episodes, if you go back through my episodes and find the one with Daniela Texera, who made an appearance in not the last lot of David Attenborough series, but the one before, I spoke to Danny about the comeback of the glossy black cockatoos on Kangaroo Island. Danny did her PhD on those, so we've already got one there for you to load up and listen to. And Danny's now working with the Malleefowl and is still involved with the glossy black cockatoos. So there we are, Kevin. I'm one step ahead of you there. So any other questions or anything? Next, I want to ask you, Sean. You haven't got into photography, but how often do you take your binoculars with you everywhere when you're skating? Like, do you drive somewhere with your skateboard and your binoculars?
Yeah.
And how are you listening? Are you listening on the phone, or are you making notes, or?
It depends. I'm pretty good about keeping to eBird's standards, the Cornell standards, and that they've set forth for like what accounts for purposeful birding versus what do they call it? Uh, it's like it's like when it's not intentional, when you just like happen upon something. There's like a setting. I'm pretty good about listing it like that. Why I'm blanking on what that choices. Incidental. There we go. Incidental
Or
bird.
bullshit birding.
Yeah, exactly. Like car birding, like driving
Yeah,
and
yeah,
seeing,
yeah,
almost crashing because a bald eagle is overhead or something like that. I
yeah.
try and be if it's something of a note, I'll list those. When I go skate, if I'm going to bird, I will run a checklist for like an intentional amount of time. Otherwise, and I'll list on my phone. Otherwise, I'll often just keep track and put together like an incidental list so I know what's been moving through the park and I do try and keep a list for every skate park I visit because they are almost always in like some nice park situated by like a body of water or something great. So it's nice to like see what's around and often like really cool species. My local skate park has a seep. It's like a spring water seep, and in the
Okay.
fall it runs right under a bush that goes right to some non-native bush. I don't even know what it is. It's some ornamental bush that nobody's taken out yet, and but it's covered in warblers on a sunny fall day. Fall warblers covered. Like every time the conditions are correct. It's covered in warblers. I know I'm the only person writing checklists, but like I've gotten, a 20 species bush like list at certain times of the year with between warblers and sparrows and stuff. It's great. It's great. Like that's kind of how I do it. Binoculars are usually in my backpack or in the on or something like that, so I can keep them safe. But I always bring them intentionally because you never know what you're gonna see, and everybody has questions. Awesome, always. They like always want to know what you're looking at, and somebody will always be like, "Oh, well, that's just this." I'm like, "Well, actually, it's not that. It's this," and it's a little bit more important to understand why that bird's here and like why you know these trees are not being cut down because the source of the acorns they're producing are gonna, do that. And they're like, oh, like yeah. So like, pick up your lit trash and throw it in the bin when you're done with it. Like we don't like just like think about that. Like there's literally 10 species of birds above your head right now while you're skateboarding. Like absolutely 10 species minimum. And they're like, are you kidding me? Like, no, I'm not joking even a little bit. I can hear 10 species. I don't even know what's actually there. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like a great educational opportunity for people that don't often get, like, think about that kind of thing or are not often in a position to think about that kind of thing, where you never know what people have had experiences with and things like that, and you might change somebody's perspective. You might save a species. Who the hell knows? Like
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you go to Kangaroo Island and go to the skate park, you will see masked lapwings, according to Stan, on
well, I'll be
Kangaroo
there.
Island,
How do I get there?
because
Send me
uh,
there.
so well, look, we're all becoming friends now. So of course, when you do get your Australian trip organised, I'm pretty sure you won't have any trouble finding people to take you wherever. Look, you can hear and see the masked lapwings at my place most uh, most nights. I can
Oh,
hear them,
that's
and I see them maybe 2 or 3 days each week. They
there's so
hang
many.
out.
I want to see all the fairy wrens. I have friends who just moved back to Australia to Tasmania, so I need to go visit them. I know there's some great great stuff there. They keep sending me photos of things that I'm like, I have no idea what that is, but I'm so glad that you get to see it. Like, I just like I cannot wait. Chowder the skateboarding bulldog. I don't.
He's on TikTok. Okay,
I
well,
gotta say,
Kevin,
there's so many
Kevin,
skaters.
send me that link, Kevin, and I'll get it to Sean. I don't know whether Sean's a TikToker.
My wife is. She would relentlessly make fun of me if I downloaded TikTok at this point in our relationship. So
Yeah.
I'm bound to not downloading it.
Well,
But
you get to
every
see.
skateboarding dog deserves its shine. Everyone should love every skateboarding dog and follow them because it's never not the cutest thing ever.
I've frequently seen a skateboarding bulldog, so I don't know if that's the right one.
There's a few of them, and every time I see a new one, I can't understand. My dog just barks at my skateboard. She doesn't
Yeah.
ride it. She bites it.
I think you have to socialise them at a really early age.
Oh, I tried. It never worked. From puppyhood, I was desperate. Didn't work. I don't get one of those fun ones.
Now, there's a good reason to get on TikTok nowadays because both Kevin and I are uploading daily on TikTok. So
Yeah, there's a great conservation TikTok. As I understand it, like there's tons of conservation work going on.
I'm still trying to find people. I mean, I can't follow everyone who follows me. Otherwise, my whole feed is just full of stuff that I really don't have the time or the interest to watch. But I have said to people, if you're a birder or conservation ecology person, let me know, comment or something, and I'll follow you back. But now, since we've got quite sidetracked, but I want to get back to skating. So I've got a couple of questions that I thought about, particularly for you, because of course we need to go down the stereotype questions for a guy who skates with tattoos on his hand. Are the offspring punk?
They used to be.
Oh, I'm not accepting that.
They were. I don't know. Are they?
Green Day, yes or no?
Yeah. Ish.
So Black Flag.
Yeah, that's punk. Yeah, that's punk.
Yeah, that's what I reckon. So, Offspring are a punk band, a pop band. Same with Green Day, in my view. They're pop
think
bands.
like the Offspring tried, Green Day tried, but they've come along. They're a lot. They've gone. Yeah, not anymore. Whenever they've lost their punk rockness long ago, I think. But Black Flag never lost it.
How many PhDs are there in the Offspring?
2, right?
They're 2. So again, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm thinking maybe someone can tell us. Yeah, there's definitely one. But
that's Bad Religion. There's a PhD in Bad Religion too.
Yeah, but I saw something the other day. I don't know if you follow on YouTube Justin Hawkins from The Darkness.
Mm-mm.
He tells a whole lot of stories, but he was talking the other day about Bad Religion in response to what somebody had asked him about. Apparently, they're doing their shows now sitting on seats. So, because the guys from Bad Religion, hey, I'm mid-50s. The guys from Bad Religions are in their 60s.
Yeah.
So I'm not against that. I'm not against that at all. I reckon if they can get out there and do it.
At this point, they've earned it, right? Greg Graffin's been teaching at like Berkeley or something like that.
Now you're a philosophy. Now tell me, just bachelor, graduate, masters, started a PhD. How far did you go with your philosophy?
I finished my bachelor's and started my post work. I did a little bit of my like master's PhD work through my
So,
bachelor's
so
degree.
masters with an eye on doing a PhD.
I never made it through even through a master's. I got
Yeah.
stopped in the middle of it. It was just life got in the way of my
Oh, and
academic track.
oh, and you need to be a trust fund kid, don't you? Basically,
You
so
can't
to
afford
do
it.
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, full transparency. I have a background. I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy and $100,000 in debt for it, and never have ever gotten to touch it realistically. It's all been my own writing, because when I was supposed to go get a PhD, my ex uh, my old relationship was in her master's program, and it just everything it just fell to the
Yeah.
wayside, and now I'm 41, and maybe one day maybe one day I'll go back, but there's a lot of I studied social theory mostly and things like that anyhow, so it's a lot of
Uh,
stuff that's easily applied right now.
did you see what to
Yes, I'm
follow
gonna
here
ask
from?
her when I see her in
Yeah.
the morning.
So,
She's definitely
so
asleep.
so Chowder the Bulldog, all on
I'll
all
find him.
one word.
I'll find
Um,
them. I don't know if Chowder is a male or female.
yeah. I have to ask you, since you at social philosophy,
Yeah, social
so
theory, more
social
like
theory. So,
mhm.
are you much of a YouTube watcher or a Twitch watcher?
YouTube for sure. I consume a lot of YouTube between skateboarding videos and then everything else that comes up. So there's so many great talks that I've found from people I didn't think I'd ever get to see speak, and like old talks that have been loaded of like, yeah, I mean, great minds and things like that. So I've found some really cool stuff like that. I
Well,
love
I'd,
YouTube.
I'd love you to check out Vosh if you haven't already on YouTube, and
Vosh.
yeah, VAUSH, and check it. It take you a while because I have long discussions, but I reckon it's a real danger to get into philosophy. He has a whole lot of debates with people about philosophy, and there's obviously a lot of people who think they know a lot of stuff, and
That's the problem.
it's staggering how stupid some people are and how anchored they are to
My
to
hubris.
to an opinion that they
Yeah.
can't substantiate. I heard him. He hosted these two dudes having a, a, a origin of political theory slash social theory debate, and one guy was a pedantic wanker. It was so funny. Anyway,
Well,
yeah,
because it's everything is a cycle. Everything is a trend cycle, right? So, I mean, like even social theory, right now we're seeing a reemergence of semiology, semiotics. Like nobody ever thought that would come back. Like I certainly didn't, and I did a lot of
um,
work in it. Like people told me there was no reason to study that stuff because it would never come back into existence, and now suddenly we're using semiotics in
yeah.
everything in marketing. It's wild
Well,
how quickly that came back.
Well, I don't know a lot about semiotics. It's probably called something else in my world. I probably know what it is, named something else. But that Michael Knowles bloke did his either a thesis as a master's or was in a PhD program on semiotics. So if some dude from the Daily Wire did his graduate stuff on semiotics, it's obviously something I don't want to touch. So
It's 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 stupid. It's marketing. It's like basically like breaking marketing down to like a binary base, and it was pretty well proven by a lot of better thinkers than I that there's no such thing as a binary base, and so basic semiotics is dead in the water. It's
so
built off of basic linguistics, which is
yeah,
built off of a binary system, which is still a horrible way to build any structure. So it's just I don't know.
the hardest thing I ever did in my university experience was 2 semesters of linguistics. That was the hardest the most difficult shit I ever did.
Horrible.
I can tell you.
It's so dry. When you get through it, when you get into like discursive like theory and stuff like that, it becomes a lot more interesting. But like, man, is it like, God, it's so hard to get through. It's so much. Yeah.
Now I'm glad Kevin's dragged us back on track. So Kevin's going to be in NYC and the Catskills. Now, Catskills, is that's sort of down on the trail, isn't it? Getting down more. I'm thinking that's Tennessee or Ozark country, isn't it? No.
Same trail, but north. The Catskills are like northwestern Mass, northeastern.
Oh, okay.
So up where the Appalachian Trail
comes
through the corner of Connecticut and all up in there, and you get into the Catskills.
Cool. And Ashokan, do you know about that music festival there?
I do not, but there's a lot of music festivals in the Catskills, so I'm not surprised that I did not hear of it.
Well, but there you go. You're going to get a free meal at the Elm Street Diner.
I can't believe I've never been to the Elm Street Diner.
Well, you can save it up to get Kevin to hook you up there. So that's good. Kevin, tell us: is it a classic diner? Is it one of those diners that looks like a bus, shaped like a bus, or is it actually like a straight front thing? Or does it have a sign? Does it have diner in big fluorescent lights up the top? Because apparently that's every diner in America, right? So you have to tell us this. You can see diners in movies and TV shows all look like that, all like that. You know the bus, or like a trailer that we would call a caravan with those rounded ends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think I've got to about the end of Common Sense Birding. We've done a bit of punk rock. We're now getting into restaurant reviews and at diners. It's a normal sit-down diner. Does it have some kind of Elvis burger, or how do they name their burgers? And actually, can either of you explain to me, how is a slider different to a burger?
They're just really small.
So
a burger is 8 inches, or the inches to meters, centimeters.
Yeah, 8 inches. We're talking maybe 6 inches is about 30 centimeters, roughly. No, hang on. No, that's not right. It's about 15 centimeters.
Yeah.
15. I think it's 17 centimeters, I think, if we're going to argue about it. But, hey, it's about that. 6 inches about the length of that book, right? It's got to be relative. So what's the point of a slider if you've already got nuggets? If you've got chicken nuggets, what's the point of actually having a slider?
Slider is the beef version of a chicken nugget, I guess.
But what's the point? What's the point of making a bun that's a bit bigger than a bloody mini cookie?
I would think that it's so you could get different flavors all in small samplings, but I don't think it ever works out.
Or is it so that you can put your $5 burger up to $8 and then sell a $2.50 slider, and people think, "Oh, that's good."
Yeah, it's American stupidity, Grant. We just,
Oh, don't worry, they do it here too. It's and it's why your supermarket prices continually go up. But that your formerly 250 gram pack of biscuits / cookies are now 125 grams. That's just the game is played. Now, I had a question, and now it's gone totally out of my head because we're talking about sliders and things like that. What's the best bird?
I fucking hate that question.
It's one of the bird emergency questions. You have to be prepared for it.
Great bustard. That's the best bird. Great bustard.
Okay. The great bustard. Okay. what's your bucket list bird? Now it's probably going to be the same thing.
Harpy eagle.
Oh, harpy eagle. Oh, I can now do the ad. You should listen to my Philippines eagle episode because the Philippines eagle is almost as terrifyingly amazing as the harpy eagle.
They're so cool. A Philippines eagle. It's so. My wife asked me the same list, bucket list bird, and I said it would be a harpy and or Philippines eagle. I would accept either one of them for sheer size and ferocity. So anything that eats monkeys is fine, scary enough for me.
My next trip to the Philippines, I have 3 objectives. I've done an episode on the Philippines eagle and the Philippines cockatoo.
Mm-hmm.
Have not seen either of them in the wild or in captivity, but I'm going to go to both of those projects to catch up with the people that I've interviewed. But the plan is in Mindanao to see a Philippines eagle in the wild, and on Palawan to see the Philippines cockatoo. And the other objective, or it could be 5 or 6 objectives, any of the bleeding heart pigeons. So, but most of them are in pretty dodgy areas. I must say, to go to Sulu or Mindoro, if people think that they're dangerous, there's dangerous places. I think both of those are probably dangerous places, but I'd have to work it out with who to go with and whatnot. But
you need to get the right guides.
Yeah. But I want to see a bleeding heart pigeon before they're gone. That's pretty much that, because not many of them last.
I feel like that's like what 70% of the bird species we should like. I want to see them because they're about to be all gone. So, like, what is it? I don't know what the actual percentage is, but I have to assume that like at least 70% of the world's bird species are in actual peril of like extinction, right? Like we've got to.
Well, so many. Now, while we're just doing, I'm just putting in the comments the links to for the Philippines eagle, and while I'm there, I'll do the Philippines cockatoo, and I'm going to give Kevin the tip that if he goes to thebirdemergency.com/podcast, he'll get the link where he can subscribe and he can get the whole list. And I might say some of the early episodes of the podcast are not in the YouTube because I was only recording them and not doing YouTube back then. But there's a whole lot of stuff on YouTube that is not into the podcast feed yet.
Exclusive content.
Yeah, well, and actually, because I'm sort of streaming to everywhere, but now I'm doing more stuff, and similar to what we were talking about way back when Chris, with his question about when you're going to do just more bird stuff. Well, when I get more bird people who are talking to me, but also, let me go back here. You can help me out by helping me get some money towards a faster computer, so that instead of taking 3 hours to render, like the interview that I did on Friday, actually it's the one that I did on Friday with Will Wilson from Rwanda, it was already going for 3 hours this morning and it was only 15% through. So yeah.
I don't miss
become a member and help me out with that. It's one of the reasons why I haven't chopped up the long interviews into short video clips yet, because it just takes too long to do. But a new computer will help me out with that. Now, did run? I hope running that didn't just No, kill the feed. So the other thing too, folks, while I'm doing the begging and everything, even if you prefer to get my content on some other platform, once I get 500 subscribers, there's new features that I can use on YouTube, which can make it a little bit groovier to do some of the things. So, yeah. So even if you follow me on one of the other platforms, please take the time to head over to thebirdemergency.com/YouTube. That's just another way of doing the membership. You can, if you don't want to be a member, but if you are a member, you will get special members only interviews and content and discussions like this one. Soon I will be putting some of it off, and then it'll be worth the wait for the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months that it takes to get into the podcast feed. So yeah, Ricky is back with me for the bird watching deep dive next Friday, not this Friday coming. And next week on Wednesday is the first of our members only shows. So Dawn Chorus on Wednesday. So Kevin, I think I've asked you on TikTok, record a Dawn Chorus for us wherever you are, whether you're in Fiji or Wodge can maybe do one for Vanuatu or Thailand next time. And Sean, I'd love to hear your Dawn Chorus. And all you need to do for that is just do like I do for my first seen and heard. Take the phone out. If you don't want to be on camera like I always am going hello, just record what you hear. It's far easier on this platform to share video files than it is to share audio files. So please, and everybody is welcome to do that. I would love to hear a Dawn Chorus. Will, if you catch up with this, in Kigali, from Rwanda. If you're in Thailand, I would love to hear what's going on in Thailand. If you're in Iceland, I don't know if there's much of a Dawn Chorus at this time of the year in Iceland. Surely there's some robins happening in Suffolk or Edinburgh or something at the moment. So yeah, that's the whole thing. It's all about sharing what we're doing and getting everyone sharing and involved. Cool. So Stan's already popped his Dawn Chorus. Stan's put it on his YouTube channel, and I haven't listened to it yet. But I can share websites, as you've noticed before. I can do that. So if you've got it on a website, on a YouTube or something, I can share that too. But if you haven't, please send me dawnchorus@thebirdemergency.com is the easy way. You can email me your video files. Of course, you're only going to make a couple of minutes or a few clips a couple of minutes long. Don't send me a 3-hour video clip. It's not going to work. Sean, what's your next sort of bird watching plan? Like apart from heading down to the skate park.
I haven't had a very solid plan this year. I think for right now, we're going to be doing a little bit of traveling, I think, this year. So I'm just going to bulk up my state, like my US list, and see how many other states I can get some birds in. And I have a lot of Western species that I still haven't seen in the US and stuff like that. Southwest too. I want to see. I'd love to see California condor in the wild. I still haven't gotten to do little things like that. Places that I've been that I was not a birder before that I'd like to go back to Puerto Rico. I really want to go back. So hopefully, that's the short-term goal, is to get to visit, the West Coast and maybe get back to Puerto Rico for some Puerto Rican endemics that I know I saw, but
you didn't take any notice of.
I didn't, like Puerto Rican toady and things like that. Just things that I just didn't get to, I didn't appreciate when I was around them. I want that opportunity again. So I think that's That seems
Yeah.
to be the goals now. Plus, we have we're running a friend of my one friend and I have like a few spots around our area that we are looking for breeding locations for a couple of species that we're fairly certain are here that haven't been seen in a long time. So we found a little bit.
Oh, ivory-billed woodpecker.
Yeah. I bet you didn't know they were. That's where nobody's seen them because they're here in Connecticut.
Well, I love. Occasionally, I'll get a Google alert with someone claiming that they've seen an ivory-billed woodpecker
Oh,
again, and
I'm sure that they did, but nobody
yeah.
else saw it. So
No, that's right. No,
yeah,
nothing conclusive.
yeah.
Um,
Look at the
Prothonotary
evil.
warbler. Have you ticked off your prothonotary warbler?
Yes. Oh, not for the year. I have
Okay.
Prothonotary warbler. In state, it's not a breeder here. We're We are due for prothonotary warblers to breed here. I think we have a lot of new cedar swamps and things like that taking shape where they will be happy to go. So I think it's a matter of time. They're annual vagrants to our area, so I think it's just a matter of time before they establish a breeding population. I think we're pretty close. I
Really?
love it. They're beautiful, yeah. There's a
Um,
few warbler species that we're pretty sure are, if aren't already taking up some small breeding populations that will end up here. Prothonotary, um, Prothonotary warblers, Kentucky warblers, Swainson's warblers, all ought to have made the move, but for some reason haven't yet. So it's more of when, not if. Yeah.
Very cool bird,
In
the
my mind.
prothonotary warbler.
I don't know how
Yeah.
everybody agrees with me, but there's a few of us that are pretty certain that that's the route we're going here. So a little
Um,
warmer, a little wetter.
I thought Kevin would have a California condor story. So
Oh,
there we are.
oh,
Um,
Pinnacles. What a great place to see a California condor too. Pinnacles is gorgeous.
um, Andean condor. That's the one that's on my list. Uh,
Friends of mine were just on a climbing expedition in Patagonia, and he actually walked over a small like rise in the cliffside, like wherever they were hiking for access, and there was an Andean condor on the other side of the hill. So he took a picture and sent it to me. I was like, "What the you just fucking happened upon an Andean condor? Like, whoops!"
but that's how so many of your really good birding sightings happen, though. I mean,
Yeah,
I've, I've,
100%.
I've recounted this before. Now, the grey falcon is a bird here that people, put on their list and go searching for.
Yeah.
I was living in central Queensland for a while, and I was driving my Land Rover to an appointment I was doing going to people's houses to try to sign them up to a friendly society saving plan, and I had to go to this place, on a farm a couple of hours in off the coast, central Queensland, and I stopped the Land Rover to open the gate, and there's a grey falcon sitting in a dead tree, right there.
Well, that's
And it
that.
and it wasn't fast. It watched me for a while, and I sat there for about 10 minutes. And I was late to the appointment because I didn't drive down the long drive to go to the house because I was sitting there watching it. So
I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. So sometimes they are just
My favorite way to see him.
easy to get. There we go. I knew Kevin would have the Andean condor. Um,
One day I'll get to Chile.
I need to obviously get Kevin on the show because
Clearly, Kevin has seen everything.
that's right.
I love
I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere.
it.
Yeah,
Kevin's
yeah,
list is 9,000 birds long.
yeah. Well, actually, that's the question. I want to save the answer to when I do get to get Kevin and hopefully watch on the and am I pronouncing that right as well on the show to actually talk about the list. that's an amazing project, isn't it? To want to photograph every bird.
That's unreal.
And I can't remember, Kevin, whether it was every terrestrial land animal or whether it was every mammal as well. But I noticed you've been diving and doing fish as well. That's just astounding.
That's one hell of an undertaking. I think it's incredible. Even if, like, yeah, I mean, there's just so much to see. Everybody needs to see everything before it's gone.
Well, that's right. That's right. Which makes me think about that Last Chance to See. Did you ever see that show? It was a BBC show, I think. I think it was BBC, not ITV. It was called Last Chance to See, and Stephen Fry was a co-host of it, and that's got that famous footage of one of the kakapos landing on the co-presenter's head, trying to root his head. So, yeah, Kakapo's doing surprisingly well.
They're coming back.
Yeah. Of course, I have a Kakapo episode. Would you like the link to that, Kevin? One of the very popular ones that I did with Andrew Digby. Kakapo recovery effort. When did I do that? Gee, that's a fair while ago now. When did I do that? I released it in 2021. I think I recorded it for International Parrot Day, World Parrot Day.
When you look up Kakapo, one of the first things that comes up is shagged by a rare parrot.
Yeah, that's that footage. It's so fantastic.
I did see that episode, actually. Yeah, I've seen that footage. It's really funny.
Yeah, it is. It's great, isn't it? One of the greatest PR moments for Kakapo conservation, for sure. I agree with you, Kevin. Everything is amazing. I find the ordinary as amazing as the extremely rare and bizarre. This morning I saw a flock of spotted doves, and actually, oh no, it's not a spotted dove out my window. I just saw some movement out my window now. It's not a spotted dove; it's a female blackbird turning leaves over at the base of the mandarin tree next to the compost bin and the worm farm. But usually on the ground there I see a spotted dove out my window. But this morning I saw a flock of about 30 spotted dove. Now I don't usually see flocks of spotted dove here. I might see pairs and small groups, but I saw something unusual this morning and it's made my day. Even though it's an invasive species, and I wish there was something else. Yeah. Anyway, I reckon we're about done. Let's do some low carbon birding, folks. Okay. Do follow. Let's get this one up again. Do share this tab instead. I'm going to try and get Gianluca onto the podcast to talk about this astounding journey to go and do some field work.
That's gonna be a
let's see, can I is that gonna work?
Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay, mate. It's that part of the world.
Now, so.
That's right, and it's part of the it's one of the things about doing a podcast across 1,000,001 time zones. That's the Twitter handle to follow this amazing journey from Denmark or the north coast of Germany all the way to Papua New Guinea, avoiding air travel where possible. Unfortunately, 2 legs have not been able to be done by land or sea, but everything else has been by air. But that's my plan, to do a Australia and Southeast Asia first off with a map like that without any air travel. Well, I just don't think I can get out of Australia without doing air travel. But I'd love to be able to get through Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. I'd love to be able to get into the Philippines by boat. I don't know if I can. Anyway, that's great. Sean, you're very much in the dark now, aren't you? It's got darker as we've got talking, I think.
Oh yeah, it's well dark at this point.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I'm glad we could make it happen. And
in a while, I haven't gotten to chat birds in a bit either, so it's nice. It's nice to learn more about some things some birds that I don't know anything about. So I can't wait to see my first fairy wren. So.
Oh well, you're welcome to come back and chat anytime, and don't be surprised if I invite you because it's just good to have different perspectives when we're talking.
I love
birds, and I think it's important that we do consider the different perspectives. And look, Kevin's a great one to talk about this because he's got a place in Fiji and Suva, spending so much time in Thailand. Wodge with Wodge in Poland. I'm assuming that's where Wodge's parents are from. And am I pronouncing it right, or should it be Wojcik? I don't know. Well, I don't know. Polish is hard.
Polish is tough.
Polish is hard, especially for Australians who we can't pronounce anything properly. Apparently, I can't even pronounce the name of my own city correctly. Apparently, I live in Melbourne. So,
oh really?
Not
that's how it's pronounced.
Well, it's how you lot over there pronounce it, Melbourne, but it's Melbourne, mate, Melbourne.
I definitely will at least say Melbourne.
Voy, okay, Voy.
I would never say born.
Okay. So it's Wojcik. I was sure it was. If I said the whole name, I would have said Wojcik, but I just wasn't sure. And you're always best to ask. And
I like Waj though too. And both of them, Voy and Waj.
And also, I don't know whether it's actually whether it's a Polish form of the name Roger, because one is John, and I don't know. I don't know these things. So, Mon's parents are Polish. Fantastic. There we go. If you watch a lot of British dramas, they stereotype Polish people dreadfully and I think you have a different way of stereotyping the Poles in the US. I think it's a different.
My family's from England. My mother and her whole family's English, so I've learned both stereotypes of both sides. My grandpa had a name for everyone.
My spotted dove just came and had a look, and he's just jumped out again. All right, look, we could ramble on. We could talk about the bad rap that the Poles get in all those British crime dramas.
Absolutely.
I'm even surprised how they're often treated in Vera. Now, with your parents being English, Sean, is Vera a favourite of your parents at the moment?
I don't think that my mom has an opinion.
Oh.
I'm not sure she's been paying attention.
If she pays any attention to what's on TV in the UK, she'd have to know. She'd have to know Vera, starring the amazing Brenda Blethyn, who is, I don't know, pushing it out, I think. So
I'll have to ask her because she talks about all sorts of shows and stuff like that from when she was younger. I don't know. I wonder
Was she a fan of the Bill or Inspector Morse? Do you know?
I don't know. She only ever talked about music, never about TV. She was always there was always music with her, so I don't
Okay.
know. I'll
Well,
have to ask her. She always I know like Ab Fab and Faulty Towers and stuff
yeah.
like that. So the
Oh, how,
the things that they're best the British TV at its finest. Absolutely fabulous. So
and of course, so much great British TV is made by really awful people like
yep,
Faulty Towers.
always.
So what Wojciech in English is either George or Albert.
Oh,
So there we go. We've just got a lesson. Um, what's
yeah.
John? What's John in Polish? I really we've opened up a can of worms here. But but if Wojciech goes to either George or Albert or both of them, I've got to know what John is. That's just amazing. Oh, there are a couple of bird emergency questions we didn't get to, Sean. We did get your best bird and your bucket list bird.
Yep.
What field guide do you use?
Ooh, that's a good question. Whatever one's closest. I don't have like a favorite necessarily. Um, I think nostalgia would put me to the Audubon Field Guide just because it's the first one I ever owned. Like my grandmother gave me a hand-me-down copy of the Audubon Field Guide, but I think yeah, whatever one's closest when I need it.
Well, you've got the Sibley, don't you?
Everybody has the Sibley.
Okay.
How
So
could you
what?
not? You have to
Well,
have the Sibley here.
I don't have one
In
yet.
the US, I should say. In the US, if you don't
Yeah.
have the Sibley, are you really? Yeah.
So what are the other ones? If you've got the Sibley and the Audubon, what else? And discounting regional ones because I
Well,
know
there's all
there's
the
a whole heap of
Petersons.
yeah,
Yeah, all the Peterson guides. So you
and
can get
they're all regional, aren't they? Like in terms of
well, they don't not all of them, I guess. There are some broader, but the Petersons are nice just because like really like you need a warbler guide, you need a sparrow guide.
oh, okay. So they've got a guide to sparrows, to warblers,
If you
yeah,
don't use, yeah, I think personally the Peterson,
orioles.
like I like those the best when it's necessary because we're only seeing them a couple months a year in their breeding plumage and a couple days a year in their non-breeding plumage. Both ways, like it's just like May to June. It's barely really when the concentration's high. So if you don't have a field guide, especially with fall warblers, especially because everybody has always said, Sibley and all of them, that fall warblers are impossible or sparrows are hard to ID. And like, I'm sorry, but that's like the worst. Don't pass along that kind of like like reputation because then everybody believes it. And it's not hard to ID fall warblers. They're just not. They're not hard. It's just a matter of paying attention. Like you said, like, what does a wing bar look like? Did it have a wing bar? I don't know. I didn't notice. Well, that's because you didn't like, then you clearly weren't looking. Like, it's not that difficult.
But another great segue. That's what Ricky and I are talking about every second week. Last week we did scrub wrens. Next week we're doing thornbills. Now, if you are new to bird watching or want to up your skills, just because we're talking about a particular group of birds doesn't mean you won't get something from our discussions because we're talking about the things you look out for that are highlighted in your guides and how to train. I mean, what I find interesting is how to train yourself what to look for so that you can notice shape and behavior and and birds that strut and birds that scurry and birds that bounce and birds that stalk. It's just state of mind as much as anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason I do first seen and heard each morning I noticed I was becoming less good at watching birds because I was doing less of it.
Yeah,
It's a skill you have to keep practicing, and especially when you're listening for birds, you have to keep doing it.
I run. So in a couple of weeks, I'll get back into my habit of like listening through like hours of warbler songs so that I'm ready. Because you miss 95% of the birds you're not listening for or something crazy. It's like you see so few versus how many are overhead all the time. So
when you're out birding or twitching or bird watching, however you want to describe it, are you taking a phone or another device that has calls on it that you can access when you're out?
Always.
Are you recording calls when you're out okay?
No, I am honestly, if I don't, there's no point in owning a camera or recording devices of any kind for me because you'll never catch me thoughtful enough in the moment to grab for a camera versus binoculars or like my phone to hear the call to be like, wait, I think that because for us, think about the thrushes, gray cheek thrush and wow, I'm brain farting. I'm just getting tired. There's different thrushes with different songs, and they all look the same. And like the same with a lot of our flycatchers and stuff like that. They all look exactly alike, and it's all about their song. So if you're not brushing up on song, if you're not like paying attention to the subtleties of song, and sometimes it's like a trailing note that spikes versus drops, and that's literally the only difference in that bird visually or audibly unless they're in hand, so I think I just don't have the time, like my brain doesn't go to that. I want the ID in the moment. I don't think about going back to it ever. So
so you don't go back over your notebooks of lists going, oh, remember the summer of 78.
I am not a nostalgic person in any way. I'd rather throw things away than hold on to them. It just isn't my way, and it extends into my hobbies. And skateboarding is going through a massive nostalgic renaissance right now, and it just gives me the ick. It drives me nuts.
So you got rid of your Bad Brains vinyl, did you?
No, that I still have. There's a few things that
So you are nostalgic, just not for birds.
This is I only want to hold the records. It's just the records. I don't know what it is. I have a Spotify account. I don't even play the records.
Yeah,
I just like there's certain things, but even in that, like the nostalgia isn't rooted in the object necessarily. It's more in like I want to pay it forward to the artist and even if it's representative or something like that. I feel like,
All right, let's.
I know, too young at 41.
Yeah. All right. Well. Just because the opportunity to veer off for a minute. Sorry, bird folk. Dead Kennedys or Black Flag?
Black Flag.
So is Jello a folk hero or a tosser?
Both.
Correct answer.
Holiday in Cambodia. The things he's singing about, of course.
Let me tell you a story. I went to school south of a place called Frankston, which is like what do they say, bumfuck Connecticut or something, right? Or it would be bumfuck Tennessee, right?
Perfect.
Nailed
it.
Right. So out and now it's like just part of the suburban strip. But there was one bus in and one bus out. I could get a bus out at 7:10 in the morning, and I could catch the 4:20 from from Frankston to get back an hour and 20 minutes later back to where I grew up, right? And I went to a hippie kind of independent school. But I was into the Dead Kennedys, and they were coming to Australia and they were playing in Melbourne. But none of us I think I was in year 11, year 10 or year 11, none of us could get to Melbourne to go to any of the pub shows. But there was this pub that held rock gigs in Frankston. So, and they were selling tickets through a record shop in Melbourne, and that was being promoted through one of the community radio stations here called 4RRR. That's 4RRR, 3RRR. Sorry, that was 4 was Brisbane, 4ZZZ. So none of us could go to the gig in the city. So what we did, we just rang up continuously for weeks. We rang this record shop and say, "Are you doing a show in Frankston? Hey, you doing a show in Frankston? Hey, will there be a show in Frankston?" And we just got everyone we knew just to ring up. So the Dead Kennedys did a show in Frankston.
Oh, wow.
To about 13 of us. It was amazing. It was amazing. When they got over being absolutely fucking pissed off, it was a great show. Oh, look, there were probably 30 or 40 people, but yeah. But the show was only scheduled because we just kept ringing up.
There you go.
I remember sitting around with I must have been in year 11 or year 10, because I know there were guys older than me, and one of my mate's older brothers was into all the cool British punk bands like The Fall and everything. Mm-hmm. And I remember just tossing up this idea: wouldn't it be good if we created enough interest for them to actually schedule a show down here? So then we just went and bloody did it, and it was was dial public phones where you'd put your 20 cents in to make a phone call, but none of us wanted to spend the 20 cents, so we all had these washers that were the same size as 20-cent pieces, and we just used them, and they would make the call, and then they'd go straight through the phone and end up in the refund slot, and we just go and do it and ring anyway. Anyway, Bird Nerds, that's your punk rock lesson for today. If you don't know who Jello Biafra is, he's aged quite well. He's still extremely acerbic and funny, but a bit of a warrior for environmental causes.
He's never slowed down.
I don't reckon anyone would have been remotely interested in the ketone leaks, the chemical leaks in Japan. And, in fact, the dolphin slaughter. He was one of the first people from outside of Japan who was talking about the Bay of Carnage. Yeah. And also, from my point of view, probably the first person who made me realise that it doesn't really matter if they're a Democrat or if they're a Republican. They're still a proto-fascist, really.
They're still an asshole.
Yeah, that's right. So, anyway, folks, I hope you get to bed nice and early, Sean. Don't forget to check out Chowder. Chowder the dog. I can't remember what that list was, but I'm going to be looking up Chowder on TikTok. There we go. I almost got back to it. Chowder's a dude somewhere.
I did see the Chowder's a dude.
You can follow the Bird Emergency on TikTok if you want to. You can find Kevin on TikTok at the Bird Explorers. Kevin's not only doing lots of bird content and animal content on TikTok, he's also a Wordle nerdle, and I discovered yesterday a Pokemon Go nerd. So Kevin is the ultimate bird nerd.
Catch him all.
Sean, are you doing like any kind of occasional bird content on social media? You ever talk about your highlights?
Every once in a while, I will be on the Nate Swick's podcast for the American Birding Association. I've been on that pretty not he has a lot of rotating casts, so
Yeah,
but you'll catch
yeah.
me on there. Every once in a while, we talk about bringing the podcast back. We'll see what happens. But otherwise, you'll just catch me ranting about anything and everything on Twitter, especially if it comes to bird names or unionizing National Audubon Society and such. So
I'm just getting that link up for the ABA podcast if I can find it. Which one is it? It's not Inside Track, is it?
no, it's American Birding Podcast. Inside Track's probably like a lawyer podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
Also the American Bar Association.
Here we go. I found it. It's the logo that most people will notice, I think, when they see it. Oh, it's taking forever to come up. Podcast.
They're this month in birding. I've been a guest on 3 or 4 times now. Last one was in September, and that's always such a fun panel. And Nate's kind enough to let me rant as I was often well known to do. He'll let me rant on a topic every now and then. Keep your fucking cats inside. All sorts of fun stuff. So
I know I've reached out to quite a few people. I think Drew Lanham I reached out to.
Oh yeah, Drew's tough to pin down. He's a busy man.
Yeah, that's what he said. Nick Lund, Ted Floyd. There are a few of the people that I know I've reached out to. It's
Nate is a great voice, great advocate as well. If you ever get a chance to speak with Nate,
I know I did contact the American Birding Association because I think I got my podcast going at about the same time they did, and so I did my first interview in 2017.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and at the time I didn't even get a response back. So it's about time. I'm now going revisiting all those people because now I think once you get many tens of thousands of downloads, people go, oh yeah, when they search. Well, I know when you search a lot of stuff in Google, the first 5 things will be me. Mm-hmm. So they go, oh, you're famous. Yeah, right.
I learned fast that I just had to make sure I just pissed off enough people with the things that I was ranting about. That got me quickly paid attention to. It doesn't take much.
Did you upset anybody like sort of influential or anything? I mean, I tend not to care if I piss people off. I don't like saying things that are really dumb, like really uninformed or dumb.
Yeah.
But I reckon we've got an obligation at this time to be controversial in a sense, because being polite in conservation, being nice and polite has got us fucking nowhere.
Yeah. Well, 100%. There's a few organizations that didn't want their people speaking like on the podcast and stuff like that because they knew
call them out. Who's so conservative? No. But let us know now. Like who are the organisations that are so either?
Well, so that like anybody affiliated with any of the state chapters of the Audubon Society were basically like a no-go because we would talk about COVID or we would talk about racism or we're talking about like sexism and access and anything, honestly, any excuse to bring up something controversial that make people squirm, like we're going to talk about that stuff. And a lot of people don't want their organizations associated, so they're either hesitant to allow their workers on, or they'll, be mindful. So I did have one chapter president uh, call me uh, because he wanted us to take an episode down, and he like threatened. He was like using the person's job. Like, well, you could get
Oh,
fired if you don't take this episode down. And I said, well, um, no disrespect, but you can fuck right off and
yeah,
get that, because there's not a
and
chance in hell that I'm going to take it down now. You lost any bargaining rights by being so thoughtless as to just say you're going to fire somebody because I didn't take this down. Fuck you and your organization. Good luck
yeah,
getting.
yeah, good luck in court. Yeah,
Oh, we took him. I mean, we just slandered him really fast across like everything. We just talked about it blatantly on the, and it was good, good swift retribution. Things.
and and let's be really clear: you didn't slander them, but you did talk about the incident and what they did many
Exactly.
times. But it definitely wasn't slander.
No
So,
slander.
no, that's right.
We try not to do that.
No, that's right.
We fight. We try to fight the good fight, and use our voices as loudly as we could, and I think it worked pretty well for a couple of years, and I'm real happy that we got to make like a splash, so to speak, in the bird world, and at least in the U.S., because it helped catapult some people forward, and I think a little bit, and help bring some, help bring some pressure to topics that people are afraid to talk about. Like, I'm okay being like knowing that like my white privilege has gotten me a lot of places, and that
Mm.
I I I'm like okay saying that, like, I've never had to work for this stuff. I don't deserve to feel safe like any more than anyone else. So it's important to talk about that kind of thing. Like, I'm a guy, I'm a white, I have it real easy compared to everyone else around me that's not, and it's important, that no matter how much pushback you get from important people, from family, from friends and stuff like that, being realistic, thorough, and authentic, and just a fucking nice person, or like, realizing that, like, it's like the person standing next to me, like, because he's black, can't go the same places as I can safely.
Yeah.
Like, it's my job to be an advocate and an ally in that situation, and that's where I think we all need to make that realization, and it's as granular as like being in the birding industry, the birding world, and there was so much pushback because of all of that, and it's really
Yeah,
easy for people to ignore it and to be like, well, that's not how it is. Like, I need you to just take your glasses off, like those rose-colored glasses, for like 10 fucking minutes, and just look around you. You know, I just
every every year I've reached out to people before, when they have Black Birders Week, and to try and get someone to talk about birding while black, because it's a perspective that I don't believe I can talk about
Mhm,
just on my own. I mean,
mhm.
that's insane, but I think it's really really important. But I haven't been able to find anyone who has wanted to come on, and I think that's probably because of why do I want to talk to someone over in Australia? But but
I would imagine that a lot of the movement's pretty localized and pretty grassroots. It's
but
tough to
but
find people that
but a
are
third of
moving.
my audience is in the US, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think oh no, it's probably not quite that big, but my audience in the US is fairly similar to the audience in Australia, and I guess another third would be
Well,
basically in Europe. But
keep in touch
um,
with, keep get back we'll keep in touch, because I definitely still have a lot of, like, there's still people that I can reach out to and stuff like that, and put you in touch with, that we one benefit of being loud, you know sort of irreverent assholes on the air, was that we did make a lot of good friends, and
yeah,
those
and
friends go a
and
long way. So if there's anything I can do to help out, absolutely.
And of course, it's not just an American issue. Something I always talk about is that it's difficult to find researchers who are either not only black but just local people. Like so much of the researchers, I want to talk to people about research in Madagascar or whatever, and so often they're from US universities or UK or European universities. So that's a problem that academia generally needs to deal with.
Oh, cool.
Is
I mean,
that
weird?
It's
true,
but it's no longer really simply colonialism. It's just a form of it's sort of a patriarchy that's spun out of colonialism, and that we all think, oh well, we're helping fund a university course in a particular country, but we still demand that 50% of our postgrads are from our country. I mean, that is just another form of the throes of colonialism, and I find it very difficult to find. I'm always looking for black and brown and yellow and faces. I don't have any problem getting women on, but I have a lot of problems talking to people who are African about African conservation and Asian about Asian conservation. But I don't have any problem finding someone from the US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Northern Europe. So that's a big thing we've got to get over as well.
It's not because they're not there, so just their silence. Yeah,
that's right.
Always been
so.
there.
So, folks, I'm guessing you'll want me to get Sean on again. We'll do that. We'll find a way to do it. Kevin, I'll be reaching out to you. I just got a note. My book from Rebecca Heisman, who I'm speaking with on Tuesday, in the morning, 8:00 in the morning, Melbourne time.
Ooh.
The book that we're going to talk about has just arrived. Thank you very much, DHL. While we've been talking, so we'll get on with that. Kevin from Bird Explorers on TikTok. Sean, you can catch Sean from the Foul Mouths podcast, which is FOWL Mouths podcast, which is on hiatus, but who knows? Sean might have to become a Bird Emergency cast member, and you'll find him also as an occasional contributor to the American Birding podcast. And if you go to aba.org/podcast, you'll find links to there. I'll obviously put them in the, what do we do? In the doobly-doo and the, down below and whatever. And the birdemergency.com/join. There's my thing. What's Kevin put up here?
Well, that's his. Is that his iNaturalist account? I have to go look through that.
Probably. I can't click a link from there, but I will have a look at it later. So Bird Explorers on TikTok, and you can, if you follow me on TikTok, and I'm Grant Bird Nerd on TikTok, but I think I've set a link up, thebirdemergency.com/TikTok, to get there. That'll be great. iNaturalist link with the link tree. Okay, great. And breaking news, and it's something to do with Bryan Cranston, I think. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's a different Cranston. It's the daughter of the ex-Australian Taxation Officer Deputy Commissioner found guilty over her role in $105 million tax fraud. So our tax commissioner here had two children who decided to set up a big scam. So that's been really good for him. That's been great for his reputation. Thanks, son. Thanks, daughter. Anyway, I thought that was something to do with Bryan Cranston and being Oscar Day and all that. I thought it might have been relevant. Well done, Michelle Yeoh. Thanks for giving us the updates on the Oscars, Kevin. Go to bed, Sean. Now that I've kept you up until 1:30 or something. What's the time there in 10 of 1. 10 of 1. Okay, yeah. It's 10 of 1 in Bumfuck, Connecticut. So,
Perfect band.
yeah. Oh well, you can get a bit silly. We've really run. I've got to learn how to shorten these conversations. Although I reckon we covered some pretty important ground.
I think so too.
And I always wanted to do a long form show, and boy, it's long. So, thanks, Sean. Thanks to the Riot Squad, everyone. Thanks Kevin, for contributing so much. Mon, Naomi, Stormy. Who have I missed out? I think I've got everyone. Mon. Oh, Shane. Sorry, Shane. We'll talk about Shane's 4-wheel drive another time. I'm keen to know all about that. I think I've said thank you to everyone. This is the Bird Emergency. It's been Monday with Grant. I'm back on tomorrow morning with Bruce Richardson talking big years and turning your experiences into books. Well, that should be fun. See you, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.